Maplewood City Council meeting for Monday, December 10th. How's everybody doing? Good, good. We just had the reception for two, and I thought it was really nice. Tu Zhang was elected as state representative to the Minnesota legislature, and so he's having his last meeting here tonight, and it was just a reception, and I think he's coming back here shortly. One thing I want for the headline tonight, as we're all out and about, I'm sure all of you, like me, still get asked about what happened with the council race. So I am asked that frequently because people get mixed up between the coin toss and what happened. So I just, it is in the Maplewood Review, and the headline is Maplewood Council Race Recount Won by Incumbent. So result reverses coin flip. So if you have not seen this or you did not know that, it's important to pay attention. So congratulations to Mayor Lee, who now will be resworn in January. And then we will have eventually a vacancy with Tu Zhang moving on to the legislature. And so people are also asking a lot about that process. And so the first thing, just so people need to know, is we have to declare a vacancy. And there's no vacancy yet, right? Representative Zhang elect?
Not yet.
Not yet. So the next time we meet, this is our first and last meeting in December because the next meeting would fall in the holidays. So we meet January 14th, correct? And so at that time, we will talk more about the vacancy and what the process would be if the process has been determined. Sometimes, City Manager Coleman, I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, but it just takes some time, right? There has to, a number of things officially has to be declared, the process has to be determined, so forth.
Yes, Mayor, you're accurate. First, we have to have a vacancy, and we won't have that until January 14th. At that time, council will be discussing options for how they will go about replacing Mr. Zhang's position here on the council. And there are a number of options for the council to consider, and we will talk about them on January 14th.
So stay tuned and enjoy the holidays and all those kinds of things. The other thing, City Manager, I hope it's okay to acknowledge this on camera, but we know your father passed away last week, and I think the council wants you to know we send our condolences. We know he was ill for a long time, and we've been thinking about you. We're glad you're with us tonight.
Me too.
Yes, and our thoughts are with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So with that, next we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we will have a roll call by our City Clerk, Andrea Sint.
Councilmember Zhang.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman. Here. Councilmember Smith. Here. Councilmember Abrams. Here. Mayor Slawick.
Here. So everyone's here. At this point, we have something called the Mayor's Address on Protocol, and we typically only do this when we have a public hearing. So tonight, we have a public hearing. And one thing is about that, if you are here to speak at the public hearing, there is a sign-up sheet in the back. So is that back there? And I will announce that again as it gets closer. The Mayor's Address on Protocol. Welcome to the meeting of the Maplewood City Council. It is our desire to keep all discussions civil as we work through difficult issues tonight. If you are here for a public hearing or to address the City Council, please familiarize yourselves with the policies and procedures and rules of civility, which are located near the entrance. Sign in with the City Clerk, which is that sheet at the back, before addressing the Council. At the podium, please state your name and address clearly for the record. All comments, questions shall be posed to the Mayor and Council. The Mayor will then direct staff as appropriate to answer questions or respond to comments. And I just want to be clear because we only have this public hearing once a year, but it is our Truth in Taxation and CIP public hearing tonight. Next, we have approval of agenda. Is there a motion?
Second.
It's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Juniman. Approval of agenda. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Juniman.
One council presentation. It's recycle your holidays.
Okay. Juniman. Anybody else? I have a couple. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll do a council presentation on the Police Advisory Commission.
Okay. Police Advisory Commission. Councilmember Zhang.
Would like to make a statement.
Statement by Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. And then I'm going to talk about 622 had their Realtor event recently, and there's quite a bit of news there, so I want to speak about that. The Nature Center held a stakeholder group, so I'll talk a little bit about that. And then Minnesota Mayors Together went to Wilmer, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So anything else? Council, looks like everybody's spoken. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hearing ayes, all, the agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes. The November 26, 2018 City Council Workshop minutes.
I move,
Is it too much? Well, we want to be fairly close so we have a big voice. But as long as it's not going to, as long as we don't hear feedback. Okay.
I move
Thank you.
approval of the workshop minutes.
Okay, it's been moved by Juniman and seconded by Abrams. The City Council Workshop minutes for November 26th. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all, the minutes are approved. The November 26, 2018 City Council meeting minutes.
Move approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Zhang and seconded by Juniman. Approval of the November 26, 2018 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all, the minutes are approved for November 26th. And last, we have the December 3rd, 2018 Special City Council meeting minutes.
Move approval of the special meeting minutes for December 3rd.
Is there a second first?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Juniman and seconded by Zhang, the Special City Council meeting minutes. Councilmember Abrams, is there further discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's just a grammatical point. Under unfinished business, it doesn't make much sense from the remainder of the meeting due to her and the council seat. I think we can maybe phrase that a little bit better.
Let me see where that is.
Unfinished business on E,
Yeah.
page 11.
Yeah. I was like,
Very eloquent.
Oh, I see.
I think just simply due to the council seat, instead of her.
Makes sense.
I don't know, do I need to recuse? No. Okay, fine.
And City Clerk, we have that. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all, the Special City Council meeting minutes for December 3rd are approved. Next, we have appointments and presentations. First, we'll have administrative presentations, a council calendar update by our city manager, Melinda Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawick, members of the City Council. The council calendar update is meant to give you a snapshot of what's coming up at our next meetings and also to talk about where we're at with some special research or other projects, topics of concern that you've asked us to look at. Our next council meeting is January 14th. On the workshop, we'll be hearing from Excel on the gas main replacement project and the impact that's going to have to our community in the coming year. And one of the things that we'll also be doing at the council meeting is the 2019 council and staff appointments to our various boards and commissions and other agencies that we have liaisons to. On January 28th, we'll be bringing forward an update on a tree program. And there has been some discussion tonight that we'll have to make sure that we have the proper attendance on this, but we're talking about doing a swearing in for our council members, Councilmember Abrams, Councilmember Juniman, and Mayor Slawick on January 7th, and tentatively scheduled for 5:30. With regard to some of the other topics or things that we've been working on, all of the things have been completed with the exception of number 11 on the list, which is talking about sign removal on vacant buildings. Those were reviewed by the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. The Design Review Board is asked to take a little more time to talk about that issue, and then Mr. Martin will be bringing you back a report sometime on January on where that sits for your information. So that's all for the calendar tonight. Mayor.
City Manager Coleman, one of the signs is that Toys R Us sign. So is that included?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that we're trying to talk about.
Right,
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah,
that,
it's almost-
Councilmember Juniman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's, I mean, pretty much a shock if anybody's been driving by there and sees the sign lit up and drives in the lots like, oh.
Yeah,
And on restaurants and all those types of things, it's kind of misleading.
Right.
yeah.
But they're kind of big, so it's probably expensive to take them
Run
down.
them, yeah. It's hard to take them
Even
down
shut 'em
too.
off
and-
would help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even shutting off the lights would be a big thing. So, thank you.
Mayor,
You, Councilmember Juniman?
we should focus on the fact that on January 10th is the State of Maplewood luncheon.
Ah, yes.
We don't meet before then, so. But,
So January 10th is the State of Maplewood. Now, did I see that's a breakfast?
no, it's luncheon.
It was a lunch. I have a default setting
11?
on my calendar.
I think it's 11.
So it's a luncheon as usual, right? And I don't know if Joe is still here. There he is in the back. So council, you might have saw he is asking us each to invite 5 friends or businesses, ideally, to the state of the city. So I thought that was a good request, right? And so I hope everybody will take it seriously and invite somebody new, because sometimes we get the same people because they always come to our stuff, and we need to generate some new folks too. Yeah, good. Next we have, thank you, Councilmember Abrams.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add something to the list. The police department, and I'm sure the other council members have met with them, the police department asked to meet individually with council members to talk about their strategic plan for 2019. And I met with them. I met with Sergeant Busak and Sergeant Beardeman, and I was really quite impressed with the process that they're using in terms of gathering a lot of insight about really what should the strategic plan for 2019 for the police department look like. And I also went over with them, I don't know if council members asked for this too, but I asked for how did we do on our strategic plan for 2018, and they actually had a score sheet in terms of giving grades to themselves, and that was really, I thought, a great idea as well. What I'd like to suggest for adding to our council comments, I'd like to add, when the police department gets the strategic plan together for 2019, that they come to a workshop so that they can talk to us. I mean, as policymakers, I think it would really be helpful for us to know what are the determined strategic plans, goals for 2019. As policymakers, I think that that's really going to help us, just in terms of the budget and understanding better. I also understand that the fire department is doing a strategic plan as well. And I would like to hear from the fire department too at a workshop so that we can catch a real good understanding and a grasp on what it is that they're planning.
I think that's a great idea, and I don't know, I mean, it'd be up to our public safety director, Scott Nadeau, on how that unfolds, but I think I did had my interview, and it would be interesting to have the 2 officers that are meeting with everybody talk with us more about that so we can see how that's unfolding. There was one other one, are you taking feedback at this point, City Manager Coleman? And I'm going to introduce it a little bit, but 622 is announcing a major reorganization, and they're giving presentations in the community.
Good.
So I know we just had the superintendent, but it's pretty, I think it's pretty big, and I think that the council should understand it. So when we're asked questions about it, which has happened to me, that we understand what's happening, so we can fluently sort of
Yeah.
converse about it.
I will reach out to Ms. Osario and ask her if she would like to, when she could come and give us an update on that.
It shouldn't take too long. Joe was there too, as well. Okay, great. That brings us to council presentations. Councilmember Juniman. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder again, by the time we meet again, the holidays in most people's minds will be long over. And so I wanted to remind you that when you take down your decorations, which if you're better than I am are up by now, hopefully mine will be up before then, and you have lights that you either just aren't going to use anymore or burned out or whatever, strings of lights, we are collecting them for recycling here at City Hall. There's a huge box you may see out in the lobby, and it's almost full. It's really heavy. There's one up at 1902, and there's one at the community center, and a correction to last time. While you can't drop them off here on weekends, you can drop them off at the community center on weekends, because they're very open on weekends. So please don't throw lights away. Bring them here for recycling. Thank you.
Good announcement. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to let the council and residents know we've had some really great meetings with the Police Advisory Commission recently, sort of discuss the future of that group. As you know, we brought that group together relatively quickly after the Use Force Task Force process was coming to a close. And while I think we got them off to an okay start, I think the group has really been interested in getting better definition around their role and really understanding how they will work with residents and the police department and the city to add the most value. And so they've been on a journey to sort of work through that, and I think we're in a pretty good place. They are going to be meeting 3 times over the first 3 months of 2019 to sort of solidify an action plan for the year. And also during that time, they will be bringing forward to the council a proposed new charter for the group for us to review that will be a little bit clearer and I think be a little more action-oriented rather than data review-oriented, which is a little bit more where it's focused today. So we will keep you apprised.
Excellent. So sometime, you're thinking in January maybe, or?
I think we'll probably see the charter towards the end of the first quarter, so probably March-ish.
Great. Good update. Thank you. I just have 3 brief things. Joe Sheeran, our communications manager, and I attended the 622 Realtor event. We kind of expected that it was going to be the same thing about realtors and schools and everything, and then it was a little bit different, right, Joe? In terms of the superintendent announced that she has been out to meet with all of the schools to present what I would call, and this is why we really want her here, is a reorganization of the district. There are some major changes, so for all of you out there that haven't heard about this, you're going to want to either go on the website or take a further look, but things like Maplewood Middle School would no longer exist, and on that land would be a new, I'm advocating for Maplewood Elementary School. And all students in the north, it would basically draw a line across the district, and north they would go to John Glenn and north, south they would go to Skyview and Tartan. For South Maplewood, I think that's a welcome change because kids had to be bused all the way from South Maplewood all the way up to Maplewood Middle. But there are some schools that are going to close, and there are some schools that aren't going to get any renovations, and there are some schools that are going to have major renovations. So there's lots of things on the horizon that we'll want to talk about. The biggest thing, though, is we all know that it takes money to do these things. And Norris Lowick's simple version of this is they're coming off a referendum and debt. Ellie could probably almost explain this better than I could. And then so that for our taxpayers, they wouldn't go up at all. It would remain the same. So for the same amount that we've been paying for an old referendum, they could keep this going and to fund these changes. And I think it's really kind of exciting. I actually found it to be very exciting and invigorating for our school. And Joe, if you're up here, I'd ask you what you thought about it. But if you have any thoughts, I mean, I think it's the fact that they're going to update the schools for realtors is going to be exciting, right? Because we're going to be a lot more competitive, I think, with White Bear, Woodbury, Roseville, a lot of places that are updating now. And they'll be doing the security features that we heard Aldo Sicoli talk about for 623. So that's the first thing. And stay tuned because I think this will be unfolding over many months, right? The second thing was the Nature Center stakeholder group, and I see Audra Robbins is in the audience, and she was there. So there was a group of about 15 maybe or so folks met over at the Nature Center to talk about what we passed, council, remember, about starting that master plan. And so they have hired some consultants. They were there. They asked a lot of questions about what people like about the Nature Center, what they think should be different about the Nature Center, what in our community different ways, like maybe families might want to come, and then maybe there should be different kind of programming. So it was really, the idea is to develop a master plan. And I thought it was really, really great, and lots of great input. So I think Audra Robbins is written. yeah, agreeing with that. It was really very good. So thank you for your time, and to the consultants and all the folks, all the Nature Center folks that were there. Last, Minnesota Mayors Together is a group I'm involved with. We went to Wilmer on Thursday night, and we had about 10 mayors from rural Minnesota, and it was very good. There were 2 questions asked, and you guys could, the council, you could think about this, and the staff. The first was, as council or as electeds, what keeps you awake at night? What 3 things about the city that keep you awake at night? And then the second question was, what keeps the city staff awake at night? So you're probably wondering what I said, right? In terms of, because it's hard to know. I will just say the Wilmer mayor and I had the same exact answer for what I think keeps city officials awake at night. First of all, economic development and kind of what's our future and where are we going and how are the transit lines and how that's going to unfold. Public safety, right? We always worry about our men and women that are out there as police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and our streets. And maybe that doesn't keep you awake, Mr. Love, but it keeps us awake. Yes, because we have a lot of people calling, right, about our streets. So it was very good, and we're doing this effort along with the new administration about One Minnesota and trying to pull people together. And it seems like cities have a lot in common. So it was really very productive. So that is it for our council presentations, unless, Councilmember Zhang, do you have something? Yes, you're going to give your statement.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mayor. So today is my last city council meeting before I move on to the state legislature. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone, all the residents at home, everyone that we met on this long journey, coming here to be on the city council. It's been a tremendous privilege. It's been extremely heartwarming to receive all the warm words of good luck and well wishes. I didn't know what to expect when we first went to the convention with Councilmember Smith back in May 2015. It's certainly been a long journey, but I just want to thank all the residents at home. Your involvement, your input has been very vital to the success of this city. We greatly appreciate you. I personally really appreciate all the work that all the residents have put to make our city better, throughout our entire history. To all the residents who have spent, before even the city of Maplewood existed, they've contributed so much to make Maplewood thrive. And to all the residents that have been joining our great city throughout the years, for your continued contribution to our city. And for that, I thank you all. And from the bottom of my heart, it's been a privilege to meet and know every one of you, and I will continue to be a member of your community and to participate to the best of my abilities too, and to encourage you to come out and to join us, our commissions, take part in our city governing process. We need your voices. To the city staff, thank you so much for putting with Councilmember Smith and I and our being so new, coming on to this, and especially for me, I can certainly speak for myself, asking so many, looking back now, some of the most rudimentary questions, and so thank you for your patience, your professionalism. Our city is in good hands because of your work. Not everyone is here, of course, they're busy out there. Our public works department, our police officers, our, fire department officers, everyone, our city staff, city clerks. You are the face of our city. As much as us as council members want to think so, it's really the city staff who are out there on the front lines, wearing our city badge, representing our city. And so I thank you all so much. You make me so proud to be a city council member when I go out and, meet other elected officials or people from outside of our city. And so I just want to thank you and to all the staff. To my council member colleagues, thank you all. You have been a family to me. I joined the city council right after school, graduating from school, and started working full-time and being on the city council, starting a life with you all. And you guys are the first chapter of my professional career, and I want to thank you all for all the knowledge, all the friendship, all the advice that you've all given me. I remember meeting Mary Lee Abrams for the first time, and she said, read your city council packet. It will save your life. It will help you a lot. And so I thank her for that. For Councilmember Juneman, I've been watching her on TV for a long time before I even thought about joining city council. And so she scared me a little bit when I first joined here. But I certainly learned a lot from her, what integrity and what government service really means. She's been here through all the ups and downs of our city council, and with that, I hold the highest regard for Councilmember Juneman. For Councilmember Smith, my brother in arms, we joined the council together. He's a teddy bear. He's been so wonderful to work with. My family has accepted him to join the 8 of us siblings. And so we're very, very fortunate to have him not just as a colleague, but a brother. And it's not a word that we use lightly. And so I'm really proud to have known him and his wife and his beautiful child. And so our brotherhood goes beyond our time on city council. And so I really appreciate getting to know you and, your big heart. And I look forward to seeing you sing some more. And to Mayor Slawick, you've been a teacher, a mentor, help guiding us, to learn, where to step, what to say, where to go, what the implications of some of our actions will be, teaching both me and Councilmember Smith. I know we were like the naughty boys and didn't follow every direction to the best that we could, but I thank you so much for being there and, filling in a seat that you once held. I know I have big shoes to fill, and I want to do the best that I can to fill that seat for you, and just wanted to let you know that for me personally, you've been a big part of my life, big part of my political life, big part of my professional development, and I just want to thank you so much for being there and being open, not just when I was running for city council, but for when I just needed some advice, and you were there, and just want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
And with that, the fear that I had 5 minutes to my first day as a city council member, I had the same amount of fear 5 minutes till the start of 7 o'clock. And so politics, it has its harsh contentions. There's lots of debate, lots of arguments, but moments of low skullduggery and lots of things going on. But I think politics is where we stand tall and where we really push ourselves to stand for our principles. And so no matter what happens out there, maybe on the national level, but we are in the end neighbors, and we want our cities to succeed. And so which political stripe you may come from, we're still neighbors, and we breathe the same air, drive the same roads. Our kids go to the same school. And so I just want to thank you all for this opportunity, and it's a really great privilege. Thank you.
Oh, that was quite a statement, right? That was fantastic, and we should give Councilmember Zhang a hand, and thank you for. And I'll just say on behalf of the council, and if you want to make their own statements, thank you for everything you've done for Maplewood. Sitting in this seat brings a lot of responsibilities, and being an elected official, and they're not always easy decisions here. And you've been, part of the team, you have your own contributions to how you looked at problems, how you solved them, and working with all of us. And so we are grateful. I will say one of the most satisfying moments was when 2 walked up to me, said, I have your old phone number, and I said 651-296-7807. He said, yes. And so he now has the phone number where all those people called me, they will now call him. That's a tradition. So I had it, I lost once, then it went to that person, then it came back to me, then it went to Joanne Ward, and now it resides with Tu Zhang, who I know will take very good care of that office and of his people and everybody in his district. So thank you. All right, well, we expect great things from you, Representative-elect Zhang.
But there's no pressure.
Thank you. It's been great having you. Yes, for Maplewood. So with that, next we will move to the resolution of appreciation for Melissa Peck, Community Design Review Board. And I asked who the liaison is, and I think it's you, Councilmember Zhang, right? So if you would, City Manager Coleman, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the council. When we have our citizen volunteers and members of our commission and their time, we adopt a resolution of appreciation recognizing the individual for their time committed to serving Maplewood. And I think it's been set up here this evening about the importance of volunteers in our community. And so we really encourage people who are watching or have been involved with us to think about being on one of our commissions. It's a really good experience and a way to get involved in the community. So with that, we are honoring Melissa Peck for her work on the Community Design Review Board. She started on February of 2017, and she served until July of 2017. And with that, Mayor, I would ask that Councilmember Zhang read the resolution of appreciation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Resolution of appreciation. Whereas Melissa Peck has been a member of the Maplewood Community Design Review Board since February 13, 2017, and has served faithfully in that capacity until July 17, 2018. And whereas the Community Design Review Board and the City Council has appreciated Melissa's experience, insights, and good judgment. And whereas Melissa has freely given her time and energy without compensation for the betterment of the city of Maplewood. And whereas Melissa has shown sincere dedication to her duties and has consistently contributed her leadership, time, and effort for the benefit of the city. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved for and on behalf of the city of Maplewood, Minnesota, and its citizens that Melissa is hereby extended our gratitude and appreciation for her dedicated service. Passed by the Maplewood City Council on December 10, 2018. Signed by the Mayor of Maplewood, Nora Slawik.
Thank you. And she's not here, right? Okay, thank you. So we will get that to her. Nice job.
I move the resolution of appreciation for Melissa Peck from the Community Design Review Board.
It's been moved by Juniman and seconded by Abrams. The resolution for appreciation for, and I have them on the wrong page, for Melissa Peck. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all. The resolution is approved. Next, we have a resolution for commission reappointments. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council. We have two commissioners whose terms will expire on December 31st, 2018. In asking the commissioners whether they are seeking reappointment, we also ask them to fill out an assessment of how they think things have been going on that board or commission. And we do have some suggestions, one of which was brought to our attention by John Aids, who suggested that we have more training for the planning commissioners. And I thought that that was a really good suggestion. And that's something that I will be taking on to start that process with the boards. I did it maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it's a good idea to talk about open meeting laws and some of the things that, as a commissioner, you need to know about. So I will be conducting training on that, and I really appreciate the fact that someone brought that up. I think that's really forward-thinking, and I appreciate that suggestion. We will act on that. One of the things, there are two commissioners whose terms expire. They are both seeking reappointment, as I mentioned, and that's John Eads from the Planning Commission and Alan Ege from the Planning Commission. They are both looking for a reappointment that would then have their term ending in 31 of 2021. So council, there is a resolution on page 19 of the staff report, which needs to be approved by the council to renew those appointments.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Smith. A motion to approve the resolution for commission reappointments for John Eads and Alan E. Is there any further discussion?
I think we should enter into that they finish officially on the 31st of December of 2021.
Okay. So added. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all. The resolution for commission reappointments is approved. So congratulations to John Eads and Alan Iggy. Glad you're going to be serving again. Next, we have the consent agenda items. Generally, the consent agenda items are considered routine and non-controversial and are approved by one motion of the council. However, if a council member wants to pull something off, they certainly can. I think I will take, I didn't see the order of the lights. I will take Councilmember Juniman first.
Because it has become our tradition, I believe we should highlight number 3 because it's a donation.
Okay. Public Safety Director Nadeau. It's the donation to Maplewood Police Reserves from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Foundation.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, this is an annual donation. Our reserves contribute literally thousands of hours of volunteer time to our community in a number of different ways and a number of different facets. And one of the things that they do is help out the Ramsey County Sheriff's Foundation at Fright Farm. So we assist with traffic and we work overnights helping to provide security and some other things. Obviously, having our volunteers do this is a great expense on their time, just of their own time, but it frees up our officers and those of the Sheriff's Department to not have to do it themselves. And so they honor that contribution of time with a check for $1,000 and a hot meal for our volunteers and a sincere thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilmember Abrams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove item number 7 and discuss it separately. And then I'll move items 1 through 6 and 8 through 9 of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Abrams to pull off item number 7, and there's a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 6 and 8 through 9. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes. And that now leaves us with item number 7, which is purchase of one ToolCat work machine. So who's, Mr. Love, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, Mayor and Council. So this item here, our superintendents this fall were reviewing our snow and winter maintenance plan. As part of that review, we identified the need for an additional piece of equipment to help clear our sidewalks and trails. Our city has 2 devices that are called ToolCats. These are our primary pieces of equipment that we use to maintain the sidewalks and trails. Our policy has a goal of having the sidewalks and trails open for within 48 hours after completing the street plowing activities. Once we identified this need, we've begun working with our finance director to find how we could possibly fund a purchase of a third ToolCat. We came up with a plan that would allow us to purchase this without any impacts to the general fund, the 5-year CIP, or the proposed budget. Essentially, we have some savings in some of our operation budgets. These budgets are funded through the EUF, the Sanitary Sewer Fund, and the Fleet Fund. One of the big advantages of these ToolCats is that they're able to do more than one thing at a time, throughout the year. We're not buying a piece of equipment that is used for 3-4 months and then sits in the garage. It's kind of like if you want to think of a snap-on tool, you can put on different attachments. So we utilize the 2 ToolCats primarily in the winter for snow and ice removal on our sidewalks. We also use it for mowing, as well as during the winter we use them in our EAB tree removals. And throughout the summer we use them for sanitary and storm sewer infrastructure repairs. Essentially that's what this item is, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I was emailing with Mr. Love and with Ms. Pulseth today, trying to understand a toolcat and kind of how this came to be as a recommendation to the council, since we just at our very last council meeting approved a brand-new toolcat. And so this toolcat kind of stuck out for me, and I wanted to discuss it a little bit more, in that it's not part of the CIP. It's not something that, I understand it's not being, that it would not be funded through the general fund, but it is proposed to come out of 3 other funds, and I think that this isn't, I guess I'm a little troubled by it, in that it's coming up at the end of the year because we have some additional funds in these 3 other funds. I'm certainly not doubting a possible need for it, but it's something that I prefer that we certainly vet these a little bit better. One of the tools that we have as a council is our CIP that really looks out ahead and helps us plan. And, we had some troubling news, I guess, at our, semi-troubling maybe, at our council workshop tonight about financing and things that we're looking forward into the new year. And these purchases of $50,000 here for a piece of equipment and another $50,000 over here, all of that adds up. This is real money. And I was troubled by this one in that it's coming up. I certainly do not like the idea of making purchases at the end of the year because we have surplus in budgets. As a council member, I think that that's irresponsible for us. I like to vet these things a little bit more, and I guess I'm not really in favor of this purchase in the way that we just bought one at our very last council meeting, and the fact that this isn't included in our CIP and that it's coming here so late at the end of the year, it just seems to me that I like to have a little bit more intentionality when we're spending money, and every, $50,000 is real money. It's our citizens' money. We're looking at, our taxes tonight, and I guess I'm just not in favor of this kind of spending, where it hasn't gone through that vetting process of the CIP, and I certainly don't want to take away from the work that Public Works does, because I think you guys do a really great job, but I think I would just as soon wait until next year and take a look and see where are we with these funds, and that you come to us through what is a normal process and have something like this in the CIP. Because I'm sure that if we went around to every single department, we could easily find another $50,000 that there would be another request. And so I'm not in favor of this tonight. Not the way that this kind of came up and spending this at the end of the year. I would rather wait and see what other things do we have on the horizon. Just in terms of what we have here, what are the other things that we may need for our environmental utility fund next year, for the sanitary sewer fund next year, and the fleet fund from next year? What other kinds of expenditures do we have coming out of there? This is $53,000. I can't support it, I guess. Not tonight.
To the City Finance Director, and thank you, Councilmember Abrams, that brings up some questions, right? So, is this money dedicated to that fund, or would it go back to the general fund, or how would that work?
Mayor Slawik, the funds in the enterprise funds is what we're talking about. These are enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are funded with service charges for services, for instance, an environmental utility fee. So it will not impact the general fund. That is one of the things that we agreed could not happen because of some circumstances in the general fund this year. But it would be feasible to take it out of the environmental service fund and the sewer fund and the other enterprise funds that were mentioned. However, if it's troubling for the council, we could wait and see how the year ends in those funds so that we have a precise idea of where those funds are actually going to end up with in terms of budget to actual performance. And we could wait a couple of months depending on how that impacts Mr. Love's ability to maintain the sidewalks in the manner that he would like to. But we can certainly take this up again when we have a little bit better idea of how the year will end.
But one thing I'm concerned about is I ran into I'm just going to get this out there, to the mall manager, and they said they have a tax proceeding to try to reduce their taxes, and I understand there's another piece of property in the city that's going to do that. So if they win their tax increase or the tax reductions, then we are going to obviously be losing revenue. And we all know there's revenue and then there's expenses. And so my question would be if that, well, and I know we're going to get into the budget here shortly, and maybe you're going to tell us how much, if you have a projection on what that might be. And then if that relates to this fund, how that all comes out in the wash.
Yes, Mayor Slauk, that's precisely the reason why we are not allowing any additional expenditures from the general fund. We do have tax petitions that total $720,000, a significant amount, about $500,000 more than what the norm has been. So we weren't quite prepared for that amount, and we're working on some plans to address that. I think we will be able to do that. Generally, the tax levy and the tax settlement does not affect the enterprise funds, generally speaking. However, it does affect the general fund and the debt service funds. So I guess depending on how comfortable you are with this expenditure, I think the enterprise funds could handle it, but I totally understand your concern because the debt service funds are impacted as well.
I'd like to hear from the council. We have several people that have something to say, and let's expand the discussion here. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question to start. Is this, and this is probably for Ms. Paulseth, is this, in my day job budgeting world, we have a use it or lose it annual budget situation. Is this that sort of situation, or is this something that could roll over to next year without penalty?
Ms. Paulseth.
Mayor Slawick and Councilmember Smith. Yes, that's kind of the philosophy that we use here as well, is use it or lose it, and it rolls back into the fund balance. That doesn't mean that the council can't approve it. If a department head requests it, you can certainly do that, but generally it would be use it or lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly understand that there's incremental need that increases as there's more work to do, as we're doing more work throughout the year. I also understand that we have a lot of sidewalks and trails to maintain. I'm also troubled for some of the same reasons that Councilmember Abrams brings up, and sort of a separate, more maybe philosophical reason, and something I think I've talked to other council members about, is that oftentimes when we bring up ideas or new things, new ways of going about things, we're very quickly told there's no money for that it's not budgeted. And it's fairly regular that we see these sorts of things, that when there are things that that staff has deemed as incremental but important, they pretty quickly get onto the consent agenda and get approved. And I get that. Like, there's things that come up, and I get that we need to fund it, but I do think that it can sometimes be a little troubling as an elected official and a representative of the residents, that when we bring things up, it's a pretty quick assessment that the dollars aren't there, and then dollars seem to appear when needed. And maybe that's a perception more than a reality, but that is my perception. And so that's an aspect of it that sort of, I would say, colors my perspective on what Councilmember Abrams says. Now, I would be inclined to support this. I think if we took a little time to make sure we understood it in the broader context of things, really understood the incremental need, and And I think took a little time on it, as long as that doesn't completely submarine the possibility of filling the need should we decide there is one. But I agree with you. I think it's a little hasty, and as we often say, as a group from this dais, I think we rarely regret taking time to think about things, and it doesn't mean it's a bad idea necessarily. It just means that maybe we just need to make sure that we're being good stewards.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman and then Zhang.
Thank you. There is a sentence under the fiscal impact in our report that says, "The funding for this purchase will be from operational savings in the 2018 Public Works budget." These savings are related to stormwater, sanitary sewer, and fleet budgets. Could we have a little bit more of an explanation of that, since that's what it says?
Ms. Paulseth.
Mayor Slawik and Councilmember Juniman, I believe what that means is they are savings. We do have budgets established for the enterprise funds, and those budgets are projected to be not spent completely by the end of the year. So there are certain line items that there is room in. An enterprise fund has a very different set of accounting principles than the governmental funds. So it's more like your business accounting, more like a full accrual accounting. So if we purchase this piece of equipment, it would simply be trading one asset for another, equipment for cash, and then we would depreciate it out, expense out the depreciation over the next 7 to 10 years, depending on the life of the piece of equipment. Whether there are savings or not, we don't ultimately know. We're just projecting that there are going to be savings. But whether there are savings or not, it is an enterprise fund, and is only meant for the purposes of the reasons that the fund was established. And Mr. Love has determined that they would be using this piece of equipment to benefit the EUF fund and the sewer fund and the other funds that are contributing. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman, Councilmember Zhang. Oh, Councilmember Juniman.
I have one more. We ask staff to evaluate for us and tell us what needs to be done, and particularly in Public Works, if we didn't do what needs doing, we'd be hearing about it 24/7. And the uses for this particular piece, we know are increasing because we are building more sidewalks and we have more trails. And we basically make the promise to keep them free in the wintertime. And then we have as we recall, the ugly head of emerald ash borer that has appeared in Maplewood. And so now we're having to do increased tree removal. And so I guess I think that when they ask for a piece that is obviously going to be used for the very things that are increasing to keep our residents, A, safe and B, happy, I don't have quite as much pause at this purchase as some of you do. I just think that he wouldn't have come to us at this point if they didn't feel they could do a better job with this additional piece of equipment.
Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, for the reasons that Councilmember Juniman had mentioned, I would be in favor of voting for this. Thank you.
Thanks. So I have a question, Mr. Love, about, we've had this very issue about sidewalks come up several times last winter, right? And here we are, and it's December, and we have snow, right? Some years we don't have very much snow, and people are hoping for a white Christmas. Well, this year, although it might melt later this week, it looks like we'll probably have a white Christmas. And so when I was out in October by the townhomes on Woodland by the Salvation Army, and I talked to a resident, and I got home, and there was a message on my answering machine, and she said, I just wanted to thank you because I have to get out and take my grocery cart and go grocery shopping on that sidewalk. And that sidewalk has not been shoveled and I can't get there, and whose responsibility is it? Is it the Salvation Army's, and who is it? And as you know, it wound up being, you took it on as being the city's responsibility. And so if we do something like this, does this help with situations like that? And how, this is what's hard for me to correlate, is there extra staff to operate the extra machinery, or does the machinery go so much and it overheats, and then you have to use the new one, or how does all that work?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, those are good questions. So essentially, with our snow operation, our crews that plow the roads are also the same crews that clear the sidewalks. So that, one of the reasons we do not do the sidewalks until after the roads is for practical reasons. We push the snow into the boulevard, which goes on the sidewalks. So we don't want to be out there doing that work until after that. So if this purchase is ultimately made, then we would have an additional person, an additional machine able to, be able to clear out the snow and ice from these sidewalks. So it would be adding additional forces to what we're trying to accomplish. The goal here was brought up by both staff as well as the superintendents, about the need for an additional piece of equipment. When you're looking at the CIP, you're balancing the need of a new piece of equipment or the replacement of an older piece of equipment. The item that was approved previously was a replacement of one of our existing pieces of equipment, that we did get a trade-in value on that piece. So we have been, for the last several years, operating with 2 of these tool cats, and we were looking for, the ability, once we've identified that need, to be able to purchase an additional piece of equipment for this.
So the snowplow drivers would go back, pick up the machine and be able to get out there instead of waiting. If there's 2 already out there, they can't get out there.
This would put another staff member out helping to clear all the sidewalks and trails, yes.
And we do know we have seniors and disabled population. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to add to Mr. Love's comments about customer service. This is actually one complaint that we get the most of. And I know you probably just got one. I got a couple that I had in the last week about how the sidewalks aren't thoroughly clean in time. And so I called them and said, we have to wait. We do the streets first, and, it's going to take maybe 2 days to get them cleared, and then we do the sidewalks. And they can understand that. But, I think one of the things, we try not to get in front of you and do things like this. But we also saw this as an opportunity to improve our service in an area where we get, I would say, the most complaints. In fact, I had 2 compliments about our snow plowing in the last week and 2 complaints about our sidewalks. So people do care about it, and I think we had someone come last year and was really concerned about the area around the mall. And so I think that Steve and his team were really trying to meet a customer service need that we have in the community. We weren't trying to break our protocol and not do it with the CIP. We were really trying to create a better service for our community.
That just reminds me, one other one is, as long as we're talking about this, is, because Rainbow closed, the people from Carefree Cottages, now they have to walk all the way up, and then they have to cross the light, and then they have to go all the way up to Cub and go all the way up there, the ones that can't drive and so forth, and it's quite a trek, and that's a sidewalk-driven program to get those cleared. So it looks like it's going, Councilmember Abrams?
Thank you. I wanted to make one other comment. It's not, I certainly am focused on public customer service to our citizens. I think that that's really important. I haven't heard at any point in time that we are not going to provide if we don't get this piece of equipment. One of the troubles that I have is the 3 funds that you barely mention here. I have no idea, based on this, what we might need from those funds in 2019. This is the very end of the year. And so you're asking me to use those funds when I don't know what you're going to be coming back with next year. And that troubled me in terms of this, it feels like it's so late in the game. And certainly, I don't want to be characterized as not thinking about customer service and how important it is to get our sidewalks plowed and how important that is. But you haven't said that that's not going to happen with the 2 pieces of equipment that we have now already. And I guess I'm weighing that out, and I'm not satisfied, because I think that every single department here would be able to say, there's another $50,000 that we would like to spend. And I would love to be able to give that to each and every department. Here's an extra $50,000 at the end of the year. What do you think would help to improve customer service in terms of our city? But that's not what I see my role as a policymaker. When I hear these things that we're facing in terms of our budgeting for next year, I have some big concerns about it. And I would reiterate what Councilmember Smith said too, that I have heard in the past things that council have brought forward, and the response has been from staff, there isn't any money for that. It's amazing how we can always find some chunk of money, some pool of money, and that just doesn't sit well. And the fact that this is coming at the very end of the year, and, I don't want to, use that the sky is falling, that little old ladies are not going to be able to get to the grocery store. That's not, you haven't said that that's what's going to happen. And I certainly don't want to portray it like that. But this it doesn't sit well with me in terms of trying to be fiscally responsible and looking at what we need to do. I have no idea what's coming ahead in those three funds and whether or not there's going to be enough money there next year for those three funds. So I just can't vote in favor of it.
Councilmember Smith, and then I'd like to have a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Good discussion tonight, by the way. I think this is, unfortunately, Mr. Love, I think your toolcat is getting stuck in the middle of just maybe a broader discussion around how these things go. I think in listening to everybody tonight, I'm inclined to probably support this time because of the time of year and the usage around snow, and the fact that I think there is a need for it. Particularly, I thought the Councilmember Juneman's point about the increasing mileage of trails is, that to me represents an incremental need, and I would understand how that might drive this. And I also, I guess, take to heart what City Manager Coleman said, that they don't just do this all the time to bring things outside the CIP, and I think there's truth to that as well. But I don't do it necessarily super happily, and I think that it's something we should continue to discuss on. Two of us have said it publicly. I think a few of us think it privately, that, as we look at sort of these smaller project ideas, these smaller things, how do we decide what gets prioritized? How quickly do we shut down innovative ideas from staff, council members, or anybody? It's not just about my ego when I have an idea, but it might be someone else has a great idea. We're telling them no as well. And to make sure that when we have those innovative ideas, that we look for these opportunities for small funding places. But I think it's good for us to have these conversations, and good for us to really think these things through, because it's not a small chunk of money. And when you think about what we pay per household for city taxes, that's a fair amount of households are making up that toolcat. I also appreciate that you guys are looking for machines like this that have multiple purposes. I think that's makes it easier for me to swallow as well.
Council and staff, good discussion. Is there a motion?
I move approval of G7, purchase of one toolcat work machine.
Second.
It's been moved by Juneman and seconded by Zhang. Item consent agenda, item 7, purchase of one toolcat work machine. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing 4 ayes and 1 nay, the motion passes. So, good discussion, council. I think some things for council members and staff to keep in mind. Next, we do have our public hearing. I just want to reiterate, I read the mayor's address on protocol, and if people are not following the protocol, I will read parts of it again, but we do want to hear from our residents. This will be the Truth in Taxation and CIP public hearing. They'll have the public hearing. Then we'll have the resolution certifying the property taxes payable in 2019. Then we'll have a resolution adopting the budget and financial policies for 2019 and the capital improvement plan for 2019 through 2023. But City Manager Coleman, I know before that, we have a staff presentation, right?
Correct, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council. State law requires that we adopt a 2019 budget and certify a property tax levy for taxes payable in 2019 to Ramsey County by December 28, 2018. The city must hold a public hearing to obtain input on the budget and the tax levy. The hearing is tonight. The council will consider adoption of the 2019 budget and the tax levy, as well as the 2019 to 2023 capital improvement plan. This year, the amount of the proposed tax levy is an increase of 3% or $22,109,000. The action for you this evening is to first hold the public hearing, to have a motion to approve the resolution certifying property taxes payable in 2019, and a motion to approve the resolution adopting the budget and the financial policies for 2019 and the capital improvement plan for 2019 to 2023. So just to kind of remind everybody and the people who are watching, we start the budget process in May so we started this in May of 2018. We had a strategic planning session in the spring of 2018. We had 2 council budget workshops in August, and we adopted a preliminary levy in September. The planning process also included a CIP workshop and discussion about the CIP at the budget workshops. We did have some challenges we were trying to address, and some of those were new initiatives. We included the hiring of 2 new police officers. Our new initiative to have a rental housing program will require the hiring of 2 housing inspectors, but I think you'll remember that we tried to make this revenue neutral. That we will, the cost of implementing the rental housing will pay for the new staff. We also are requesting a part-time DMV clerk. As any of you know who have come to get your tabs or other business with our DMV, it's a very busy DMV, and we are really in need of another staff person. This also includes a 3% wage adjustment and an increase in our fund balance, which you heard tonight how important that's going to be for us yet this year and moving into next year. So with that, Mayor, I would ask that you call on Ellen Paulseth, our Finance Director, to go through her budget presentation, and then we'll hold the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, City Manager Coleman, for explaining the process, and Ms. Paulseth, we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Slawik, council members. This begins our public hearing process tonight. I will have a PowerPoint to go over with you, if we can get that PowerPoint up. Thank you. So tonight, we're going to talk about property taxes. We're going to make this as simple as we can. Most residents want to hear, how much am I going to pay? How much my tax is going to go up or down, and what am I going to get for that? So we're just going to concentrate on that mostly for the first few minutes. We're going to have the same charts and graphs that we always have, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time on our budget story tonight. And go through the charts and graphs a little more quickly, because I think our story is going to be a little bit more interesting to the public. And as City Manager Coleman mentioned, we start with a strategic plan. So our story is all about that strategic plan and how our budget aligns with that strategic plan and intersects with that plan. So moving forward, obviously, these are the 6 pillars of our strategic plan. These are our strategic priorities that were established by the council. You can read them: financial stability, communication, infrastructure, inclusiveness, targeted redevelopment, and operational effectiveness. So everything that we did during the budget process was done through the lens of these 6 pillars. So getting into our story, I want to kind of flip it. My friend Joe Sheeran in the audience has been coaching me on how to write and give presentations, and he often asks me to flip my story and flip it upside down. So I'm going to start with, what do we get? What's our story? This is the fun part. I mean, what are we going to get for our tax dollars? We were very efficient this year and very effective with how we put together this levy. Starting out with this little collage of what we're going to get and how it intersects with our strategic plan. Obviously, we talked about the 2 new police officers. We've been short 2 police officers, I believe, since 2011. Something that the city did as part of a solution for the recession. We cut staff. Crime has increased and population has increased. So we're looking at this through the lens of our operational effectiveness strategic priority. The city council has had lots of conversations with the police chief about the style of policing, the proactive community-type policing that we're moving into, and this part of the budget will help with that. The city council has asked for a more engaged police force. I will say that also hits the strategic priority, or also hits the target of inclusiveness. And also, I think communication. Our officers are out there on the street. If they have the time to spend with residents, they're bringing in a message. We're the Maplewood Police Department. We're here to help. And they also, the communication goes 2 ways. They receive valuable communication that they can use as well. So a number of different strategic priorities that we're hitting with that particular portion of the budget. 2 rental housing inspectors. Again, we talked about this being revenue neutral, but there will be some costs, some setup costs in the first year. I think this is operational effectiveness. We want safe and sanitary housing units, and it's something that takes up a lot of staff time right now, but they don't have the proper tools to take care of it. So this will allow them to allow staff to achieve those objectives that the council has requested and has set out. I think it also touches on inclusiveness and targeted redevelopment. Moving on to the part-time DMV clerk, this will be a .6 full-time equivalent clerk. I believe that there's no real indication on the horizon that the state is going to fix the computer system. I think we've all come to accept that the cities and the deputy registrars are really picking up the slack here. And I guess all that we can hope for is that the Deputy Registrar Association will lobby the state legislature for an increase in fees because of the amount of time that it takes per transaction. We're going to have to add staff, and we're doing this, I think across Minnesota this is happening. This again hits at operational effectiveness and also efficiency. And I think communication as well, as Councilmember Zhang alluded to earlier tonight. Some of these people are the face of the city. The DMV is really where most of our taxpayers at one time or another intersect with the city, and maybe not even in very many other ways. They are kind of the first line there. So I think it's important that we don't have a lot of frustration with people waiting. I think you've all seen the endless lines, frustration with the staff and frustration with the people who are standing in line. So we're hoping that this will help improve that. Very quickly, we are budgeting to add $200,000 to fund balance. That's important to keep up with the targets that S&P, our rating agency, expects of us and that we have established through our own policy. That touches on financial stability as part of our strategic priority. And finally, I've kind of got a conglomeration of things in inflationary increases. City Manager Coleman mentioned that there will be labor contract increases this year, and we're estimating 3%. Not all those contracts have been settled, but we are estimating on the safe side. Again, that's operational effectiveness and financial stability. As part of that, we're also getting some IT upgrades, some technology upgrades, and we're expecting fuel to increase more than the price of inflation. That may or may not happen, but those are the things that we built the budget around. So I just completed the longest slide of the entire night, so you can feel relieved about that. So getting right down to the numbers, 3%, as City Manager Coleman mentioned, that's an increase of $644,000. As you can see, the general fund really, bore the brunt of the most increase. Obviously, that's our main operating fund. But we got some help from not having to levy for the ambulance fund anymore. That fund is in the black, so that freed up another $300,000. That was one of the ways we were able to realign resources and be more efficient. We used a number of other tools as well, but that one sticks out on this slide. Just as a comparison, the levy increases across the state. Across the state, cities increased levies 6.2%. So we're less than half of the average statewide. Counties increased 5%, townships 2.1, and schools 8.1. Just some fun facts there provided by the Minnesota Department of Revenue in total. What will that $644,000 or 3% increase do in terms of property tax levy? Again, we're always talking about the median home, the median valued home, which for this year the county is estimated at $209,660, so just under $210,000. 3.7% increase in city taxes. That's $33 a year. The median value home in Maplewood increased 6.2, so that's why we're seeing that increase that's larger than 3%, because there's been a shift from the commercial to the residential with that high increase in the median value of the home. So we talked just about city taxes. That's roughly, as you can see from this chart, just a little less than 1/3 of your total tax bill. The county gets 38 to 39%, and the school in the low 20s, and the special districts about 7. Those include the Met Council, mosquito control, regional rail, and the various watersheds that are running through the city. So the city at about 1/3 of the tax bill. So in that context, then, this is an estimate of the total property tax impact across all taxing authorities. So if I live in Maplewood and I live in School District 622, I would expect to see in total my tax bill increase by 3.6%. Sometimes I have residents kind of want to add those percentages across and add them up and think that they had a 12 or 15% increase. But remember that the city is only 1/3 of the tax bill. So the total tax bill, 3.6%, about $112 for both 622 and 623. And in School District 624, I believe there was a referendum affecting that, and we only have maybe 100 properties, if I'm right, that are affected by that. Most of the city is in 622 and 623. So again, the big news there was the 6.2% increase in value. That is the primary factor behind the 3.6% total increase in property taxes. So again, you do not have this slide, but I just got it this morning. I just finished it this morning, so I promise this is the only slide that you don't have. The second Sunday in December is always very exciting for me, because the Star and Tribune puts out it's entitled "Cities Get an Earful on Tax Increases." It's an article about these hearings. And there's a table inside about the tax increases for the entire metro area. The total tax increase for every city, 5,000 and over in the metro area. So what I did was I just took that data and I just put it all together into one high-level chart. So I took the average for all of the various counties that were in the metro area described in the article. So the average tax increase on the median home in Dakota County for the total tax bill was 7.1%. The lowest was Scott County at 2.7%. So Maplewood very, very close to the bottom in terms of compared to the rest of the metro area in terms of tax increases or actual tax impact. So I wanted to bring that information to you, even though it wasn't in your packet. I was able to get that information yesterday, and I just wanted to share it with you in that format, just to provide some context for you. So now the slides that I'll try to move a little more quickly through. This year, I'm giving you a little bit broader perspective rather than focusing just on the general fund. I'm going to focus on our entire budget. And that entire budget is about 69 million. So this chart reflects the total revenues. And as you can see, if we were looking at the general fund, taxes are about 75, 77%, I think, of the total revenues, somewhere in that area. So we're looking at the total revenues across the city, the enterprise funds, that would mean utility fees, ambulance fees, all the money that runs through the city. So you can see a significant amount, about 40% of the revenue stream comes from charges for services, from various things that we charge through our fee schedule for services that we provide. Intergovernmental revenue provides about 10%, and that is the factor that does change a lot from year to year. So when you see the slices of the pie change, that's primarily what's changing is the amount of intergovernmental revenue. So across the total city budget, about 44% is provided by taxes and tax increment. And looking at last year's revenue, not a lot changing there, but you can see how intergovernmental revenue was a couple percent lower. So that's really what makes the differences in the slices of the pie. Looking at the same thing, total expenditures citywide across the city. You'll see changes here. We're looking at public safety, about 21%. If you were just looking at the general fund, we've said this many times, it's over 50%. Public works being 13%. But when you add in capital outlay and debt service, you can see what happens. Those are the numbers that change considerably from year to year. So looking at just a more broader perspective than the general fund, I thought that would be a little bit more interesting for you this year. When we compare it with last year, you can see that debt service was $5 million more. The reason for that is because we had an advance refunding bond that was defeased through an escrow that was in place. And so our typical debt service is going to be between 9 and 10 million. I know that's a little bit complicated, but that's where we see the changes from year to year. And capital can also change significantly. So by category, and again, if we were talking the general fund, wages and benefits would be, as we've talked about before, 75% of the general fund, or in the 70s. So citywide or budget-wide is about 30% goes into wages. So again, it's the capital outlay and the debt service that take up a big chunk of it. So just a little bit more of a broader perspective for you, and then comparing that with last year, and again, seeing where those differences are in debt service and capital outlay. I know I moved through that a little bit quickly, but I know it's also not necessarily that interesting to some of our folks at home. So budgeted full-time employees, as you're seeing that go back up again in 2019, and that is 100% related to the full-time firefighters, putting full-time firefighters, the new model of having full-time firefighters rather than volunteers. So that added to our full-time positions, and that's primarily the reason for the increase. You can see we're back to about where we were in 2010. Some ups and downs. We eliminated the MCC, or the community center employees, when we contracted with the YMCA. So you see some downward trend there during the recession. And again, this year, the increase is due to the change in the firefighter model. Very quickly, the tax levy history. It ranges everywhere from 0% in 2014, increase of 0%. 2017 was 5%. Every other year ranged, anywhere from 2 to 4%. The point I want to make here is that the average annual increase, averaging it all out over those 6 years, is 3%, even if it went up and down a little bit. The tax capacity has been continually raising, so the average annual increase is 4.87, so we're at least seeing some good economic indicators coming back after the recession. And this slide I'll take just a little bit more time on. This is the tax capacity rate history, and so you can see that our tax rate is continuing to drop, and we project that it will continue to do so. And the important thing to remember about this slide, overall, even though there was an increase in 2016, it was still an overall decrease of over almost 1.5%. But the important thing to remember about this is what this means is that you as the council you didn't utilize the full added capacity of the tax capacity from the previous slide. You gave some back to the taxpayers. So that resulted in a drop in the tax rate. Even though property taxes may have increased because values increased, your rate continues to drop. So that means that you're doing your due diligence by being fair to the taxpayers. Another thing that has helped is fiscal disparities has increased over the years. This is important because these funds come right off the levy. We had a slight reduction this year, which didn't help any, but it didn't hurt a whole lot. Average annual increase over the past 6 years was over 5%. Again, this is very important because this comes off our gross levy. Wanted to point this out to you as well. The levy increases just in Ramsey County. This slide had been in here from before. Average of 8.8% of all of the cities in Ramsey County for the levy increase. That is compared to Maplewood at the very bottom with 3%. So again, I think we did very well to keep it that level. Looking at peer comparisons, and again, these are city taxes, not levies, so this slide speaks to taxes. I know I keep going back and forth, and I know it's confusing. Again, these are cities that we would consider maybe in our population group or in our peer group. The thing to point out here is that Maplewood is just slightly below the average at $803 for city taxes on a $200,000 home. I don't want you to take this to heart too closely because many of these cities have more than one tax rate, and I had to kind of go out and onto the county websites and grab an average for the city. But so this just gives you an idea where we're sitting with our peers, or kind of right in the middle. And we always take a look at our neighbors, and this is total taxes, and that's why you're seeing the different colors on the bar chart. So it's city taxes and then all other taxes. With Maplewood being represented, or with cities being represented in blue, and I've got Maplewood in red, so that's that 803 in red. Again, we didn't expect to be in the same range as many of our neighboring cities because don't exactly meet some of our peer standards for population and some of the other factors that we would factor in looking for someone who would be a peer city. But it's important to kind of keep track of what our neighbors are doing. So yes, we are slightly more than what the neighbors would be, as we expected. We are not too much different than the city of Stillwater, who is about half the size. So I think those are some good numbers as well. And I'll spend just a little bit of time on this chart and then move a little quicker through the rest of it. I've shown you this each year, and again, the data is a little bit dated because it's the latest that the state auditor has for us in final format, so it's 2016. These, again, are those peer cities, peer population cities. We could probably make an argument that Andover shouldn't be in our peers because they don't have their own police department. But someone may also make an argument that maybe St. Louis Park shouldn't be. So I left them both top and the bottom in there to give a little bit better of a sample. So Maplewood is, if you look at the very bottom where it says percent of average, Maplewood's population is a little bit higher than the average of this group. Tax capacity being about average, tax levy a little more than average, but then here's where it gets a little more interesting when you look at current expenditures. That means operating expenditures, so it pretty much means all operating expenditures in the governmental funds, not including capital outlay, of course. So about 80% of what our peers are. That's what we spent in 2016. We saw similar numbers last year when I presented 2015 data. Capital outlay can really vary from city to city depending on what kind of projects you're doing. In that particular area, we were recovering from the English 36 project, and we didn't do much that year, so we didn't have a lot of capital expenditures. Debt service, obviously, we really stand out there with 255% of the average. But I do want to point out that in that comparison, both Maplewood and Cottage Grove had large refunding defeasances that year, advance refunding escrows. Again, our debt service would typically be around 9 or 10 million rather than the 13 million. So, but it still gives you an idea. We're still considerably considerably above our peers. Cottage Grove would normally have between 3 and 4 million without the advance refunding bond. So it gives you some perspective, nothing that we didn't already know and nothing that we're not already working on. Total expenditures, 87.2. So even with the high amount of debt, we're about 87.2% of the average in spending for that year. So debt service as a percent of total expenditures, we're very high on that. We knew that. And our outstanding debt is high. The good news is that this data is 2 years old and we are already below 60 million. So we're moving in the right direction, including debt per capita, that measurement as well. And later on, we'll be discussing how we are revising our financial policies to continue chipping away at reducing the total amount of debt per capita. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on that because I thought it was important to bring that perspective to it. I think we're pretty conservative here, and I think that data would indicate that. And so this is just the chart that illustrates that same data where you can see Maplewood's debt in the gray is higher than most of the other cities, but the operating in the blue is significantly lower. Very quickly, we'll talk about utility fund rates. You're being presented later on this evening with a rate increase for utility funds. And the reason why is part of the budget process. The sanitary sewer, we're asking for a 5% increase. And the reason why is because the Met Council waste processing charges are our primary expenditure, probably 77%, I think, of the total expenditures in the sanitary sewer fund. That has increased 9% for 2019, and it has to do with the Met Council increased their budget for waste processing. But there's also been increased flow coming from Maplewood due to the expansion in our households and commercial buildings. So there's a number of different reasons, but the 5% is not going to cover the 9% increase, but what I'm trying to do is spread it out over 2 years to ease the pain a little bit for our users. I did promise you that you will see the end of the environmental utility increases soon, asking for another 3.8% to keep the cash flow necessary to fund the projects so that we don't have to use debt to fund those projects. Recycling, a small increase there. So the total bill, the total utility bill is going to increase about 4.3%. I usually try to keep it at 3 or under, but with that large increase from Met Council, I was not able to do that this year. So these are the amounts that we'll be requesting in the fee schedule. You'll also be approving the capital improvement plan. I'm going to go through this quickly because we went through an entire process. It's a 5-year plan with $64 million. Primarily in street improvements, over 40 million in street improvements, and it also includes 4.4 million in economic development for the Gladstone neighborhood to get that kick-started. Primarily funding source is still geo improvement bonds. However, this is improved significantly from when we were closer to 60%. We've got more coming from the governmental funds, which includes those franchise fees that we increased this year, and also those enterprise fund fees. Intergovernmental revenue plays a significant part, but varies. That's the variable each year. Again, just a high-level look at the plan, what it looks like for 5 years. You obviously have the full plan in your budget document, and we did have already several workshops on this. So I will move finally to every year do housekeeping and tweak the financial policies. The financial policies are also included in the budget, so I want to make it very transparent that you're also amending financial policies because they're included in the budget. The investment policy is being amended, primarily housekeeping to keep up with the changes in the interest rates, and to basically change our benchmarks to match that. The debt policy, again, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, that we're looking at our debt per capita, and we're going to keep chipping away at that. We don't want to put ourselves out of compliance with our own policy, but each year we will try to chip away until we get down to where the council is comfortable, where they want to keep that debt per capita. So lowered it another $50 per capita this year. In the capital assets policy, mostly these are new GASB requirements, and just updating the policy to comply with those. And the same with the purchasing policy. There's been a law change that provides, Mr. Beatty brought this to my attention, provides that the threshold changes from 100,000 to 175,000 for bidding out projects. So just made that change to comply with the new statutory language, and also updated some of the approval requirements to be more in line with a city of this size. These are very outdated approval thresholds that have been in place for a long time. We talked about this last year. And it also is more in keeping with the spirit of these statutory changes, just updating those thresholds. So I will wrap up very quickly here. Again, what the council will be asked to do right after the public hearing is to adopt the levy at the 3% increase. You will also be adopting the budget and the CIP all in one motion, and also the financial management policies. So there's two resolutions or motions that you will be looking at tonight for those items. And I will certainly be happy to stand for any questions.
So any questions? I think we've been through this, I don't know how many times this is, 5, 6? Yeah, so I don't see any questions. Thank you, very good report. With that, City Manager Coleman, I think I can move on to the hearing, correct? We have the hearing. Okay, thank you. Okay. Maybe no one. Ready to open the hearing? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. I have 2 people that are signed up. If you haven't signed up, make sure you sign up soon here. I'm going to open the Truth and Taxation CIP public hearing. Is there anyone that didn't want to come forward that hasn't? We have 2 people on the list. So first I'm going to call on Robert Breslin. So if you'd like to come forward, if you could say your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Robert Breslin. I'm on 701 Larpenteur Avenue East, Unit H in Maplewood. Pardon me, this is my first time here at a city council meeting. I was actually intending to speak on nuisance ordinances if I had a chance tonight. I didn't want to speak on taxes.
That's a different ordinance, City Manager Coleman.
Yeah, can I do that later?
Okay, so Mayor Slawick, the nuisance ordinance is item number J3 under new business. That is not a public hearing, so it would be at your discretion whether or not you wanted to take testimony or hear from the audience on that.
But we would do it at that time, correct?
Be handled under that time, yes.
Yeah. So because this is specific for this, we would want your comments to come at that time. So
Okay, yeah.
If you're okay waiting, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Yeah, I
then.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we just have one other person, Kevin Berglund. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the record, and welcome to the City Council, and state your address.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Kevin Berglund, Citizens Reporter News. Mayor Nora Salwick of Lake Elmo.
Kevin Berglund, are you here to talk about the tax? Could you please stick to the topic? We know you like to make things up, but we're here to talk about the truth tonight. It's called Truth in Taxation. So let's tell the truth.
Thank you, Mayor, and that's what we're interested in.
Yes, we
Your
are, Mr.
residency,
Berglund.
Lake Elmo.
Yes, feel free, Mr. Berglund.
We know you
Tell
own a
the truth.
property in Maplewood, but your
Okay,
residency,
You're out of
Maplewood.
order. I don't own any property in Lake Elmo, so thank you, Mr. Berglund. Could you go ahead, please?
I didn't talk about where you own property. I said your
Mr.
residency.
Berglund, We're
Ms.
not here to
Slawik.
talk about this. We're here to talk about the tax levy, and we're hoping you are now down to 2 minutes and 4 seconds.
Same old gravy, just warmed over. I listened to your finance director. Everything is wonderful. Yet, why is everything failing? The story, the pillars of the story. Crime has increased. We just heard that. Less value from your city dollar, less stability. High debt, we just heard that from your finance director. Sleazy elections, we watched that last a week ago. Wasting money, we just heard that from one of your council members. Poor efficiency, poor effectiveness. The story, the pillars of the story. Yet we hear from you, everything is wonderful. Poor inclusion, new and higher fees. Secret government. We know how that operates up in Maplewood. No public input. When you have public input, it's all arbitrary.
Mr. Berglund, we're here to talk about truth and taxation. Stick to the topic, please.
We're talking-
You are going all over the place. We're here for 3 minutes on one topic. So we'd like
Thank
to
you,
hear your
Mayor,
views
and-
on truth and taxation.
As we were hearing, you need the pillars of the story. Remember? We just heard that, the pillars of the story. No budget book tonight, and yet it's a public hearing in the back. No CIP book in the back. It's a public hearing for that, too. And you don't call that secret government, which non-transparent? Irresponsible spending, more irresponsible spending, we heard that tonight. Inflated property values, why is Maplewood Mall suing? Because their property value is incorrect. You had to hire your darling of community development
Time is up,
director,
Mr.
Dwayne
Berglund.
Kaneko.
Your time is up. Three minutes is up. Thank you for your
Okay.
comments.
Yes, okay.
So.
Thank you,
with
Mayor
that,
Solwick. You can
is there
see
anyone
the
else
disingenuousness of this
that would like
council.
to speak tonight? Ask it one more time, 2 more times. Anybody else would like to speak? Last time, anybody else? Public hearing is closed. So with that, council, do we have any comments or, we can't even respond to all that, let me tell you. None of it made sense. I just don't even know. I don't understand, but I suppose. I don't know. But with that, it is serious that we move on to some motions. So do I hear any motions or comments? Councilmember
Are they
Zhang.
on a certain page?
Yep, get on the right. Is it 69?
Mayor, I move to approve the resolution certifying property taxes payable in 2019.
Second.
Been moved by Smith and seconded by Zhang. A motion to approve the resolution certifying property taxes payable in 2019. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes all, the motion passes.
I further move to approve the resolution adopting the budget and financial policies for 2019 and the capital improvement plan for 2019 to 2023.
It's been moved by Smith and seconded by Juniman. Motion to approve the resolution adopting the budget and financial policies for 2019 and the capital improvement plan for 2019 through 2023. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes all, the motion is approved. My understanding is then we are done with this part of the agenda. So, thank you. And I also just want to say to the public, anytime you have comments or questions about anything you hear here at the council, just call us. Our phone numbers are on the website. Email us. come to a meeting, those types of things. But we are here to answer questions as well. With that, we will, Councilmember Smith?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to add that comment because I really appreciate that comment. And I think it's always good. I've had this a couple of times where people hear things that just don't seem like they could be true. I'd really encourage you to reach out to one of us because they're probably not. I recently had a resident reach out and ask me why the city was shutting down Sears at the Maplewood Mall. And my response was, I don't think you could find 5 people more upset about the fact that Sears was closing in Maplewood than the 5 of us. And, so if it doesn't make sense, give me a call. I'd be happy to let you know what my perspective is on it. I know the rest of us would.
Yeah, same here. If anybody's, that one, maybe a way of trying to start rumors. If you have questions about me, just call me. But it's not really smart to get up at the microphone and talk about anybody else, and right. And I live in
You don't
Maplewood.
believe us, there's also Google.
Oh, there's always Google. Google, yes. Okay, with that, we will move on to new business, and we have 6 items of new business. I do want to say this is a great final meeting to see all of these on here. I know the first one, we have people here for it, and that is the on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Myth Live 2, Inc., doing business as Myth, 3090 South Lawn Drive. So City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council. In accordance with our city code related to alcoholic beverages, we have an application for an on-sale intoxicating liquor license, which was submitted by Kimberly Brokey, who is now the owner of Myth Live 2, and who will take over operation of the Myth on South Lawn Drive. I just wanted to let you know that for purposes of license application, we did a background investigation. Nothing was found that would prohibit the issuance of the license. Also, Chief Nadeau has met with the applicant to discuss measures to eliminate the sale of alcohol to underage persons, general security, retail crime issues, and city ordinances related to the service of alcohol. And so with that, Mayor, if you have any other questions, Andrea or Chief Nadeau could answer those questions for you, but staff is recommending that you approve a motion to approve that intoxicating liquor license for the new ownership at the Myth.
Yeah. Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilmember Juniman.
I'd like to talk to the
You want the owner?
potential
Okay.
manager, please.
So if the owner could come up. And we get concerned about our liquor licenses here in Maplewood, and so Councilwoman Juniman will have some questions.
Hello.
Hi. First of all, how do you train or plan to train your servers?
Well, Kirby, our security director, is with me, and he has been training, and we're also checking into a new program, Safe Serve?
Safe serve.
Safe Serve, which will do additional training for all our staff members.
I would highly recommend that. When
Okay.
you have an operation as large as yours,
Okay.
individual communication can kind of get garbled sometimes, I believe. I'm the resident heavy here, have been for some time, and we as a community really frown on serving underage people.
I agree.
And if you have large crowds, it's much harder to control. So we ask you to be extra vigilant. This is why I asked about your training. I would suggest you follow through with that.
Okay.
And just to let you know that the reason I'm the heavy is I'm the meanest one here. And
Is
if
that
I could
true?
set the fines for compliance failures, they'd be 3 times what they are.
Okay.
That's how seriously I would like you to take this.
Okay.
And as much as I know it's difficult, it's even difficult in a bar setting. It's certainly far more difficult when you have large crowds. I will say the same to you that I say to most people. It's your job. You chose it. Now I expect you to do it. And we've had managers in the past sometimes try and say, well, it was so-and-so, but so-and-so's name will not be on the license. Yours will.
Right.
So I really strongly encourage you to train. And you have my permission to take some of my heavy with you and pass it on to your staff.
Okay.
One of the things that might discourage them from breaking compliance is you bring them with you if you break a compliance check, and they'll have to listen to me. That would really be a deterrent. So I beg you, please, we want this community to be a good place for everybody to enjoy themselves, but enjoyment for underage people does not include alcohol consumption.
I agree. Thank you.
I'm going to ask a question, then I'll have Councilmember Smith go. But, you know, one thing, I think it's exciting to have a new owner of the Myth. And can you tell us, are you going to sort of follow the same
Yep, nothing's
music
changing.
acts? Okay.
Everything's going to pretty much stay the same. We're going to stay away from the late shows. We're going to try to close by midnight. I think that's really helped us with any problems.
Yes.
So, but everything is going to stay the same as it has been.
So sort of is it once a month you have a show, or is it?
No, it just depends. Sometimes we have our slow times or busy times.
Okay. I'm a member of my family that likes to go to the Myth. And so right now the shows are closing at 2, I think, right? Some of the shows close at 2.
Most shows are.
Yeah, about 90% of our shows close at midnight. We have a rare 2 a.m.
Okay.
show. We happen to have 2 of those shows this month, but it's been several months since we've had a 2 a.m. closure prior to this month.
That's just, I become more aware when it's 2 o'clock as well,
Right.
so, good. Well, what we're glad you're here and going to be having your business. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, I agree with everything Councilmember Juneman said. I also had a great conversation with the guys when I came in, and I think there's a positivity and an excitement for the future. I really heard in your voices talking about what's happening, so I'm really glad you guys are going to be taking over. You know, the Myth is it's a big part of our North End, and as I said to these guys, you know, it's with great power comes great responsibility, right? And it's power that can be used for good or power that can be used for not so good. And I think, you know, it's something that we definitely want to keep working with you guys to make sure we keep shows safe and fun and so everybody can have a great time. And, you know, I am a big fan of live music. I'm a musician myself, and it's great to have that venue there, but it is definitely something we got to keep in close touch, work together on, and solve problems before they start, because it's no fun if we have to solve problems here. No. So look forward to not seeing you here.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, council? Okay, thanks for being here. Is there a motion? 175.
Sorry, the pages are kind of spread.
Okay, it's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Smith. A motion to approve the on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Myth Live 2, Inc., doing business as Myth, located at 3090 South Line Drive, to be valid through December 31st, 2019. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Hearing all ayes, the motion passes. Again, thank you for being here. Okay. Next, we will, move into a series of ordinances. There are 5 of them, and City Manager Coleman, you're going to introduce them one at a time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is an ordinance that we have been working on for quite some time, primarily because it's complex. Overnight parking is a tough issue. People either want it or they hate it. And it's one of those things, kind of like deer. People want to maintain the deer, people want to get rid of the deer. It's just a really tough one. I think what you have tonight before you is something that just really seeks to provide a little more flexibility for our police department and for our residents to allow us to grant exceptions for the 2 to 6 a.m. parking restrictions. And I think with the ordinance, you will see that we have built in a lot of flexibility, but also we're letting the pressure of these decisions rest with the police chief. So I would Mayor, I would suggest that you call on Chief Nadeau to go through the specifics of the new ordinance, but I would just commend staff and Chief Nadeau for, I think, coming up with a good solution that does create some flexibility for our residents, because we know that street parking is necessary in a lot of situations, and I think that accomplishes that.
Okay, thank you. Chief Nadeau, I'm going to call on you, but I also want to say I am happy to see the language in E in particular, and I think that makes a lot of sense for our city. So why don't you tell us more?
Sure. Mayor and council, you may recall that I think I've brought this to you 2 times after getting your input, and we also had a number of residents that came to some of these meetings and provided input, and also provided input to me, and I'm sure to you, when they knew that this was being discussed. And so, as it currently sits, residents can get they can get an exemption of up to 14 days per year by just calling the police department and talking to our staff, and we'll record that information. But there is a number of people, for a variety of reasons, that do seem to have a hardship. Sometimes it's because of the angle of their driveway and that it gets ice covered. Sometimes it's a handicap issue. Sometimes it's some of our older apartment communities that were built at a time where there was many fewer cars. And so, in speaking with the council and speaking with some of our residents, we did want people to comply with the ordinance of no parking between 2 and 6 unless they could really demonstrate that hardship. And so if they can demonstrate that hardship, they can now come into the police department. They can fill out an application, and we in the police department will then look at the street that they want to park on and see if it's safe for them to be able to park. And if it is, we will give them a series of restrictions and a permit. They still cannot park between 2 and 6 if there's snow and under certain other conditions, but it gives us the ability to review that for a hardship, and then it brings the decision ultimately, if they're not happy with the decision of the police department, myself or my designee, brings it back to the council for them to be able to make their case. And so I think that we're really trying to utilize this ordinance in a way that gets to the intention of not allowing 2 to 6 parking unless someone's repaving their driveway or something like that. Maybe they've got out-of-town guests, unless they've really got that hardship. And to give our residents maybe another option if they really can demonstrate that hardship. One other piece of the ordinance, which is under G, which I think was important, is that since we are allowing people with permits to park on the street between 2 and 6, we included another subsection of the ordinance which says that you can no longer park on the street for more than 24 hours without moving your vehicle. Essentially, we did not want people to park on the street with a permit or otherwise and then leave their vehicle there for days or weeks at a time. So it wasn't meant to be the long-term storage of vehicles. It was meant to be people that had a hardship. And I really do think that we did a fair job here of assessing the resident need, but also trying to make sure that Public Works can plow snow and sweep streets and that our neighborhoods continue to be, for the most part, free of vehicles at night.
Thank you. So I have a question about, where we had sort of the experimental parking over by Legacy Village, right? And so I happened to go on my snowplow ride, and there happened to be cars that were there, right? And so it was very hard to plow those streets. And so would that also apply to that neighborhood?
Yeah, Mayor and members of the council, Legacy Village, I think, was given an exception for a period of time, but one of the things that's noteworthy is there was nowhere in ordinance that allowed for that exception. There was just a decision to not enforce the ordinance. And so I think my expectation would be that the folks that live at Legacy Village would have to get a permit if they wanted to continue to park on street like anyone else.
Will you, Chief Nadeau, and you'll make that clear, or there'll be some kind of follow-up on that?
They will.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Abrams.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say that in reading the proposed changes, it certainly seems to strike a balance. I know that I heard from so many people that hated people parking out on the streets at night. Some people loved it. They needed it because of their particular family situation. I think that this will also address, residents where there may be many cars, and sometimes people are parking on unimproved, I know from Chris Swanson's days, unimproved property, and then people get upset about that. But if here, there is an actual process where they can apply and they can get the exception. So I really think that this is going to, it kind of walks the line. I think that there are many things in here that should satisfy both sides of this issue. It is a really interesting issue because people are very passionate about it. They either want it or they don't want it. And so I think that this will work. Now, with that being said, what are we going to do in terms of enforcing it if you don't have a permit? If you haven't gone through and gotten an exception, what are we going to be doing in terms of enforcement? Like for those, not legacy right now, but in the future, people who don't get off between 2 and 6 when we have a snow situation.
Chief Nadeau?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, we are working with Public Works. We know the areas where we've got issues with plowing. It is not our intention, again, to create problems with snow plowing and street sweeping and that type of thing. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it was 700 to 800 parking citations were issued last year, and we're probably on track to write that many or more this year. One of the things about the permitting process is we make very clear to them when there is snow, you can't park on the street under these conditions. And so it's our hope that, people that get these permits are going to abide by those rules, and people that don't have the permit, either the temporary permit up to 14 days or the more permanent permit with the hardship, they'll continue to abide by that section of the ordinance that does not allow them to park on the street when it's snowing.
Last thing,
Councilmember
can
Abrams?
you report back to us, let's say after the first quarter, and let us know how is this, I'm assuming, I don't know, I think that this is a real reasonable resolution, but I would like some kind of follow-up to see how is this working, and what do we have in terms of how many permits are being requested for the 14 days, how many hardships are there? And then I also would like to know how many tickets are we still writing because people still are violating the ordinance.
I think that's
Thanks.
it's a good point, Councilmember Abrams, in that I know when the summer, some cars would sit out there for like a week. And then there was one that was right behind a guy's driveway, and he felt like every time he was going to back out, that he was going to hit this car. And so how the follow-up goes. And then for all those people that wanted this, I hope you're listening, and I hope, I think City Manager Coleman, you may have a few of those names of people that specifically wanted this. Maybe we can let them know, because they're not always watching the council meetings. And then I know Joe Sheeran's back there, our communications manager. We talked about doing something in the newsletter, like new ordinances and something else about code enforcement, just so people are aware. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. This is sort of redundant, but are we going to have any kind of a, quote, education period, or once we adopt this, are we just going to sock it to them when they're not abiding by it?
So warnings or something?
Well, I just wondered, so that we can put that in the, whatever announcement we make, personally, I think you should just enforce from the beginning, but then we have to announce appropriately so that people aren't going, what?
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Chief Nadeau, I think we're okay with whatever, but we want to know what it is.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, a couple things. There was a question about how many permits we might have, and I do think it's important for us to track. One of the things that I've seen in another city, though, is when you require people to come in and apply for that permit and pay for it, it seems like it's not as large of an issue. So I'll be interested myself to see how many people come in and actually go through that process. But the ordinance as it stands has always been no parking on the street 2 to 6.
Yeah, that's true.
And so for those people that want to come in and get a permit, I don't see that there'll have to be that huge educational curve because we're making exceptions. We're not being more restrictive, so to speak. We are being more generous in our ability to be able to grant those. And like I said, importantly, for those that have out-of-town guests or for people that are resurfacing their driveway, we did not take away their ability to just merely contact the police department and get that 14-day exception.
So to that point, is there a, legislature was like September 1st for all new laws were enacted. Are these all enacted on a certain date today? Or is it January 1st, or how does that work?
Actually,
City Manager
what
Coleman?
is required is that we publish the ordinance, and as soon as that is published, which is typically about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on when we get it in the newspaper, then it becomes effective.
Okay, so we'll want to
could-
publicize that.
Yes.
then. Okay, thank you. All right, is there a motion? Okay, it's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Smith. A motion to approve the ordinance amending Section 36-39 overnight parking on city streets. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hearing ayes all, the motion is approved. I see there is another motion.
I'll move resolution authorizing publication of ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
It's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Juniman. Motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of ordinance by title and summary. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hearing ayes all, the motion is approved. That brings us to item number 3, which is the repeat nuisance service call fee ordinance. And we do have somebody requesting to talk on this, so what we'll do is have the staff report first. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawick, members of the City Council. With this ordinance, we are seeking to enhance public safety and increasing our effectiveness to utilize police resources by charging a fee to properties which have excessive nuisance calls for service, because such calls involve extraordinary cost to the city. This is one of the things that we have included in our toolbox this year, under your direction, to really work at problem properties and to make sure that our properties are safe and that they're drug-free and crime-free. And so what this does is, if people are repeat offenders and we have, after 2 calls to a home or property, we are going to start charging them to recoup some of our costs to go to those properties. And I think that this is something that we have taken on as part of our efforts to make our community safer and more livable for our residents. So with that, Mayor, I would like you to have Chief Nadeau give the specifics of the report.
Chief Nadeau.
Mayor, members of the council, this is an ordinance that's common in a lot of cities. It was certainly common in the city that I came from, Columbia Heights. And it's not necessarily an ordinance that gets used a lot. But one of the things I like about the ordinance is that it's not specific to any particular type of property, like a rental property or a business like a bar or a restaurant or some other place. But it is a way for us to be able to establish a dialogue. So if we have a apartment building where we serve a drug warrant, if we have a bar where there's kind of a large drunken brawl, then on the first offense, we send them a letter and we tell them the date, the time, the offense, and why it gives us concern. We then send them a second letter if there's another incident that happens within that 365-day period. And then on the third violation within that year, within that 365-day period, it allows the city to charge a fee of $250 to try and recoup some of those costs. But really, there's other times where, that just kind of kicks off some sort of a crime mitigation plan. It gets us to talk to the business and to give them an incentive to cooperate. There has been a couple of liquor serving establishments in town in the time that I've been here that have had larger disturbances. This is just another tool. If we have a single-family home, it doesn't have to be rental, that we have repeated drug warrants and that type of thing, it gives us another tool. But one of the things that I think is important is that there's things that we don't send letters for. We don't send letters because people called us because they're the victim of a crime. We don't send letters because of something like a domestic assault. We don't send letters or try and discourage people in any way from fairly utilizing city services. It's just a tool that we have to try and encourage people to have lawful behavior and to not allow certain types of things on different properties in our city.
Thank you. I was trying to look for what the charges were as it went up. Is that?
It's on the fee list that'll be later.
Okay. Good. Personally, I think this is really important for Maplewood. I think, as you know, I've been to a number of properties, and we've been through a number of issues, right, in the last 5 years, where this would have been a really good thing to have available. So I'm glad we're doing this. Councilmember Juniman?
Well, I think we should all be aware also that the ability to do this and have them be efficient about it has been greatly increased by the fact that now that we are in consolidated dispatch and we have new sophisticated equipment, tracing and keeping track of such things is worlds easier than it was before, both in the dispatch and the records management. So our investment in that equipment, which seemed eye-popping, is starting to pay off in being able to do these kinds of things. And we haven't had any lately, but there are times when we have public hearings about, or non-public hearings, as the case may be, but they're forced on us, about group homes and those kinds of things. And people like to make up numbers. Well, there'll be no more making up numbers of kinds of calls and that type of thing, because it's all right there. And now we have a way to deal with it before it gets to the point where people can say those kinds of things. So it is going to make for better neighborhood life, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have one person want to testify. Do you still want to testify? Okay, so how this works is name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Welcome to the Maplewood City Council.
Yeah, my name is Robert Bresson. I live at 701 Larpenteur Avenue East, Unit H in Maplewood. Thank you for giving me the time to speak tonight. I've lived in Maplewood for a long time, and I'm a social worker in Maplewood and St. Paul. And I definitely see the uses for this to manage like businesses and properties. I guess I do have a specific concern in regards to how it would affect property renters, especially people of low income. I work with people that are homeless and underhoused, and I've known people, and I know a lot of other cities have enacted similar measures, and it leads to more people getting evicted because property managers are fearful of, nuisance violations, and, that it's difficult for them to have like intricate conversations with tenants, and a lot of times they just evict people rather than trying to resolve issues and, give them a chance to, have a second chance or kind of see what the issue is really about. So, and I know, a lot of times when people are evicted, it does lead to homelessness, which is, a much longer acting community problem. So that's my large concern. And then I think it will reduce costs by reducing police calls, but I'm also concerned that people that have, traumatized histories and just kind of a lot of experience with like the criminal justice system will be fearful of calling the police rather than calling them. They don't want to risk eviction or retaliation from the property manager. They'll just not report a crime or not call when they're the victim of a crime. So I'm afraid of that too. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll let Chief respond to that. I mean, we have met with one property about that this could possibly coming down the pike and sort of the consequences and how that works. And I think you have a lot more experience with it than I do. So what would your response be, Chief?
And Mayor, members of the council, I certainly appreciate the comments here. And I think that that's a legitimate concern. And I think that we have some of those same concerns when we talk about rental licensing, right? Will these be applied in a way that, disadvantages people who aren't able to, really, defend themselves, or where you may create a situation that's homeless? I can tell you that after being in a city that utilized an ordinance like this, the most effective part of this was us getting to have that conversation and get into crime mitigation strategies about what can we do to decrease the crime, the disorderly product that's happening on this particular property. The renters themselves would not be the ones that would be served with the fine. It would be the owner. And the other thing that I would bring up is that, when you have an apartment building, you've got a lot of people that are living in that particular building. And so even though you can look at some people that might be at risk, there's other people that live in that building too. And I've certainly been in a city where we had an apartment, for example, with multiple drug warrants. We went in, found a loaded handgun under a baby's crib mattress, right? And, you have to think about all the other people that are living in this building as well as the people that are living in that particular unit. And so these are difficult issues. And I think that, the city council has the ability to be the appeal here. And so if people feel as though this ordinance has been enforced in a way that is not consistent with the community values or the things that they think are fair, the person who's been aggrieved can then come to the council and talk about why they think that that's an unfair or inconsistent way to enforce the ordinance, which I think is another great distinction about this ordinance, is that they're kind of the appeal board.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for coming to speak tonight. We talked earlier about what keeps us up at night, right? And one of the things that keeps me up at night is unintended consequences, right? I think we all come here with the intentions to make our city a better place to live, and we all come here with our own perspective on that and a perspective on our experiences. And it's sometimes hard to put ourselves into the shoes of people in poverty, people who have experienced trauma, people who have a different set of challenges than a lot of us have had in our lives. So I think it's really good to be challenged to continue to think that way as a council. That said, I also feel similar to where the chief is at, in that the biggest challenge in some of these properties is starting that conversation. And right now, for a lot of landlords, there's not a lot of reason to start that conversation. And there may be all kinds of different issues going on in some of these properties that could put these people at risk as well. Whether it's crime that's going on there, whether it's really poor landlord behavior, as we've seen here in the last couple of years several times, of treating their residents shabbily, and law enforcement having to get involved there as well. In the balance, I think this adds tools to the toolbox. However, fees are also something that can be waived. And it can be something that is a way for us to start that conversation and potentially come out with a better solution than charging a fee. But I think we got to keep a close eye on this, and if we're seeing trends of people being adversely affected, I think it's something we need to keep our ear out for. Because part of the thing to consider is that these same people that could possibly be victimized are also a lot less likely to come to a council meeting. They're a lot less likely to seek out somebody to advocate for them. They're more likely to simply be victimized and put into homelessness or other situations, and I'm not insensitive to that. So it's something I think we're going to have to proactively watch for, and not just wait for people to come in and complain. We got to keep our doors open and our ears open as we go through this, but I do think it's a tool that we need to have in the toolbox.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I think we have Councilmember Juniman, and then Councilmember Abrams, and then Zhang. So everybody's going to weigh in, which is good.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is just putting into writing what our police department's been trying to do for quite some time. And we have one building, not too terribly far from here, where we actually had the police trying to help by having a drop-in office, simply because they needed a presence. And there were so many people in that building that were threatened by a couple of residents who had the wrong kind of people coming to stay. And so when it was resolved, even the person who had the company was relieved that it couldn't happen anymore. So I do believe this is a proactive community thing, trying to make the community better for all the renters in a building. And I have enough faith in our police department at this point for being proactive and getting out into the community and presenting themselves as problem solvers rather than the heavies, that I really don't think, yes, it can happen everywhere, but this isn't Minneapolis, thank goodness. And we don't have a lot of those places, but as Brian pointed out, we have a couple of places where people were being basically abused by the landlord. They didn't leave, they weren't evicted, they were just made victims of by the landlord never doing anything to improve anything, and by letting all the wrong kinds of people. And I have a friend who has a son who is both mentally ill and drug addicted, and I know what it's like for him to find housing. But part of the problem is the housing he can find is just the type he wouldn't want to live in, because he too feels threatened. So you have to, it's a really fine line, but I do think it's worth doing this to see what happens. I think the chief and our police department have the right sense of where they're going with this, and I think it's going to improve the lives of some of the various kinds of people you're talking about threatened in our community that have had no ability to have any help from anyone before. That's my take, anyway.
Thank you. Councilmember Abrams.
Thank you, Mayor. From my perspective, anytime that you look to use law enforcement to address very complex social issues, there is a potential that there will be unintended consequences. And that's my concern. I would agree with Councilmember Juniman that I have a great deal of faith in our police chief. And I also like the element of this ordinance in that this is not a zero tolerance ordinance. This is an ordinance that will provide opportunities, a couple of opportunities before there are any fines for dialogue. And I think that it's a way to begin that discussion for really community-oriented policing, which is what our department, in my meeting with the office, with the two sergeants about our strategic plan, it is about community-oriented policing. And it's something as a council I would like to make sure that we pay very close attention to so that we don't have unintended consequences. And what I would request, again, is to circle back with the council. And I would suggest, since it's, third time before there are any fees that are involved here, that maybe after 6 months, so summertime, there will be summer, it'll come. And let's say maybe in June, if you could circle back with us and we can hear what you have to say, what's happening, what have you observed, how is this working? I don't want to go into this, and I don't know that Councilmember Smith, if this is what you meant. I don't want to go into an ordinance thinking that fees can be waived, because I think that gets into some discretionary application and then questions about that. I think that we need to go into it and see if this really will work. And I think that the only way for us to do that as a council and to know, is this in fact something that is helping our community? If you circle back with us and that report back and let us know what's happening out there. And is this something, how is it being implemented? Are there unintended consequences? Do we need to change things? Because I think our intention up here is really, in talking about these kinds of ordinances with nuisance ordinance and with the rental housing inspection ordinances, is to try to make sure that we have safe, livable places for families to live in our community. And if we don't have that ability to have some type of contact and some type of at least oversight on those when we do have problems, I think that we're doing a disservice. But I really do want to get reports back on what happens. And I think probably with something like this, because we're dealing with complex social issues and law enforcement, if we could maybe circle back with that on a regular basis. This may be something also for the Police Advisory Commission, that they could have some type of involvement with this. It seems like that might be a good fit for them since you're retooling in this next year. But those are my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Mayor. I think for this nuisance ordinance, it was designed in effect for us to handle some issues that we were unable where the council didn't feel that we were able to effectively address some of the concerns from some of the residents. And I think coming from working in a neighborhood where some of the unintended consequences had indeed happened, I think that the statements made by our police chief shows that he understands, what the parameters that we are really trying to work within are, and coming from someone who worked with domestic violence victims and working with, some of the issues of low-income individuals, low-income community members. I think this is what we're trying to aim for in our city is a community-oriented policing, and so I would be in favor of this ordinance, and I move to approve the repeat nuisance service call fee ordinance.
It's been moved by Zhang and seconded by Juniman. A motion to approve the repeat nuisance service call fee ordinance. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all. The motion is approved.
I would move the resolution authorizing the publication of this ordinance by title and summary.
Second? That threw me. Been a motion by Juniman and a second by Slawik. Motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all. The motion is approved. So thank you again for coming. That's where we're at with that one. If you're welcome to stay as we move through a couple other ones, or it's getting late, as we all know, too. So our fourth one is to amend Chapter 4, Alarms and Alarm Systems Ordinance. City Manager Coleman.
Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council, we have charged for alarm system permits and false alarms since 1980. Recently, City Council discussed alarm system permits and false alarm fees during a budget workshop and was supportive of amending the current ordinance. The changes that we incorporated into the budget include elimination of the residential alarm system permits and modification to the false alarm fee structure. We did, in order to do this, we do need an ordinance amendment, and there are two motions for your consideration tonight. One to approve the ordinance amendment to Chapter 4, and also a motion to approve a resolution authorizing publication of the ordinance by title and summary. So what we really did here was I know that last summer, we had some council members who got some calls about the false alarm fee, permit fee, and we talked about it at a workshop. And we also had Ms. Sint provide some statistics, I can say that, on permits and false alarms. And we talked about eliminating the residential permit fee. And actually, Ms. Sint had talked about how that's one of the #1 complaints they get out at the front desk. People don't think that's a fair fee. So, and we did talk to you about that this summer on one of our budget workshops. So what we did was we restructured this so it would be hopefully revenue neutral. We're not trying to make money on it, but we're trying to cover our costs. And in doing that, what we recommended was to do away with the residential permit, but increase the fees for third false alarm. When we go a third time out there, you're going to get charged for it. So the first 2 false alarms in any given year would not have a charge. The ones after that would have a charge, and they have been increased by $50 per false alarm occurrence. Like I said, this is not something that we're trying to make money on. We're just trying to cover our costs. This is really a revenue neutral. When we took away the revenue from issuing permits for residential structures, that was losing money then. That would take revenue away from us. So what we did was we tried to make that up for the people who actually have the false alarms, and they have 3 or more false alarms. So we really think that that's sort of a fair approach. That's within a 12-month period. And I think that it's fair to charge people these fees because we have to go out and respond, and there is a cost to that. So we think we're being fair. We think we have addressed council's concern with the permit fee structure. I know that Councilmember Abrams has some questions about this and may not be in agreement with this approach, but that's what we're here for, and that's why you guys decide on what you want to do. So that's the staff report on that. If you have any questions, myself or Ms. Sint can answer those for you.
Okay. So I see there's 3 lights on. Are those old lights?
Nope, they're new.
Okay. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I was one of the folks that brought this up, and I'm glad we've gotten to this point. One point of clarification, though, I wasn't clear based on the redlining to the ordinance. Are we getting rid of the permit or just the fee for the permit?
We're getting rid of the fee for the permit.
You still would need to get a permit. It just would be free.
I'm sorry, I might have misspoke. I thought we still asked them to get a permit.
City Clerk.
Mayor and Council. So we are getting rid of the residential alarm system permit and that fee, but the businesses will still be required to have the alarm system permit.
Understood. City Manager Coleman, I might just ask that you and Mr. Beatty maybe just take a look at the red line and make sure that's clear, because
Okay.
it looked, I didn't see, when you look at section 4.3, permit required term, it still reads to me that you
No
need,
alarm, yeah.
you need to have a permit. It doesn't specify commercial only.
Okay. Andrea would, Mayor?
So, Andrea, so the intent is to eliminate the home permit?
Yeah.
Mayor
And I'm
and-
not a lawyer, so, and I don't pretend to be.
Oh, I think that's a good point. City Clerk,
Mayor
Andrea
and
Sent.
council, if you would look at 4.3, B, the new B, under exemption, you'll see a sentence was added
There we
to
go.
say, city family structures and individual
Boom.
living units shall not be subject to provisions of section 4.3. And the reason it says section 4.3 is because they will continue to be subject to false alarm fees and being held accountable to hold a properly maintained system if they have one.
All right, thank you for that clarification. This is why I'm not a lawyer. You know, I originally brought this up based on a suggestion from a resident, and, you know, I agreed with that resident. I think we should do what we can to encourage folks to have features to their home that help prevent crime. And I also agree, though, that we need to have the ability to recoup costs for nuisances of multiple false alarms. So I think this strikes a pretty good balance of both of those things, and pretty excited about it. I'm also just one of those moments where, assuming this is something that we are able to find agreement on, that a resident brought up an issue, we were able to talk about it, able to make a change. It's kind of cool when the system sort of just works like that. So anyways, but thank you very much, everybody, for kind of working through this and your consideration.
Next was Councilmember Abrams and then Juniman.
Thank you. You know, I have struggled with this because I don't really see the, this is one that I think there may be some unintended consequences. Right now, because I have an alarm system, I know other council members do as well, that we fill out a form, we talk about who has a key, who has the alarm, or who's your alarm company, those kinds of things. We pay $10, which is very little. Was the problem the fact that there was a fee or the fact that there was a permit? I'm not quite sure what it is that we're trying to accomplish, because how are you going to get that information if there's no longer a permit for any of the systems? Because I thought that that was something that was valuable for the city, and now you won't have that. And then one of my concerns also was, I mean, boy, the fees jump up $100 of an alarm. And fortunately, you know, I think I've had very, very, very few, if any, I'm trying to remember now, any false alarms. I'm very careful about it. But it just seemed that, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Because now the city isn't going to have that information. There won't be a document here that, who do the police call, whereas you would have that previously. And so, and it's not the $10. $10 is kind of nothing. I mean, it's still $10, but when you have an alarm system, there's a monthly monitoring service. So are we really trying to, what is it that we're going to accomplish here? Because where will you have that information? You're not going to have it anywhere now.
City Clerk Andrea Sent. I know, I wondered about that too, because I had someone who was watching my house and they left and it went off because it was set for the night before.
Right.
So yeah, if the police got there and there's no information on file, like how do they even know?
No,
I guess
and so what are we trying to get to? That's why I didn't really understand. And quite frankly, I think that, you know, some people complain about having to fill out a permit and pay $10, which, you know, I see that there's some value to it. I think we're going to get really big complaints when when it jumped from, the third alarm goes, yeah, that's $50 increase, but every alarm after that jumps $100. And
It's
so
called
that's a
motivation.
really steep, what?
Called motivation to pay attention.
Oh, definitely a lot of motivation, and like I said, I really work to avoid those kinds of problems, but what is it we're trying to get at?
Well, let's ask just the city clerk and then maybe to the police chief if it does cause a problem, if they're not registered at all, how they get a hold of people, how they figure that out, because obviously they're not home if their alarm's going off.
Mayor and council, so we have been getting this information for the past 10 years, and we have never been asked for the information. So the security system, the monitoring company is their first point of contact. They have all this information. That is who is calling the dispatch. That's the contact. So this information that we've been getting, it has not been utilized. So that has been a difficulty for staff because they know that.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense then. Was the objection the $10 fee too, or no? Does anyone?
Councilmember Smith?
I think it's a combination of the fee and just sort of the bureaucracy of it. If this is information we're collecting and not using, it's a fee we're taking to cover the processing of information that we're not using. It just seems to be sort of a bureaucratic, self-feeding cycle that we could probably do away with and spend our time on more valuable things.
I wish that would, one more
Councilmember
point, Mayor.
Abrams.
Thank you. I wish that would have been explained, because I always viewed that document as something that the police would have access to, because it might be helpful to them, but I wish that would have been portrayed throughout all of this, because if in fact if it's information, then it purely is just bureaucracy. So, thank you. I finally feel like I've gotten to the heart of this, because it didn't make any sense to me based on the way that this was presented, and what's the problem with the $10
Mayor, do we
fee?
get extra points for getting Councilmember Abrams off the hook?
Gee.
A good housekeeping thing, and
Yeah.
it's always great to get rid of ordinances, right, or things that don't work, or fees.
But I wish that we
Yeah.
would have looked at it from that perspective and had that information about what do you actually do with that information. I assumed that you needed it for I thought that the police would have access to it.
Now we
So,
know.
Now we know. Thank you very much.
Councilmember, City Manager Coleman.
The police would have access to it if they needed it, but they don't really need it. And that's one of those things that I didn't know that either till we got into it, so we all learned something this evening.
You also can't look at a moose from an airplane in Alaska.
Thank you
That's
for
against the
sharing.
law.
No. Councilmember Juniman, it's getting late.
I couldn't live
so,
without knowing that.
Last comment, and let's
So
have a motion.
let me get this straight then. When you have an annoying neighbor who annoys lots of people, like at 4:30 in the morning, not my neighborhood, thank goodness, but so when the police do look for the owner, they find this out from the alarm company, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that
So
makes
this is
sense.
reliable? I'm just trying to make sure this is reliable. Chief?
Chief Nadeau.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, typically, so it's the alarm company that contacts the law enforcement agency through the dispatch center. Typically, after they contact to start the police, they then make calls to the key holder. You can set your system up differently so that they call you first, and there's different ways to be able to do that, but it's typically the responsibility of the alarm company. One of the other things that's interesting is that a lot of the alarm systems that people have that are hardwired and monitored, that seems like it's changing now, right? Because people have Ring doorbells, and they've got Simply Safe, which is kind of a different system, and so I think that technology is going to start to change in a way that would make it harder to apply this ordinance as it presently is today anyway. So we do go to a lot of false alarms. The problem with false alarms is obvious. It pulls officers off of other priority calls and or takes them away from other things that they could be doing. So it seems, if it's the council's will, that penalizing those who have frequent false alarms would make more sense than the permitting itself.
Mayor? I would agree with that, because when I'm talking about, someone called me about, like I could do something about it. It's a totally different neighborhood, and I don't even know the people involved, but whatever. But at that time, and this is like 3 years ago, I thought, if the fee was bigger, they would find a way for that alarm not to go off at 4:30 in the morning when they weren't home. So I really think the higher fees, sometimes the only thing that speaks to people is the fee is going to hurt, unfortunately.
Councilmember Smith, do you have a motion?
I was going to do it otherwise.
Sorry, I was just looking up weird laws in Minnesota.
There are many.
Yeah.
Councilmember,
I move to approve the ordinance amendment to Chapter 4, Alarms and Alarm Systems.
Second. Oops.
it's been moved by Smith and seconded by Juniman. Motion to approve the ordinance amendment to Chapter 4, Alarms and Alarm Systems. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hearing ayes, all, the motion passes.
I move the resolution authorizing the publication of this ordinance by title and summary.
Second?
It's been moved by Juniman and seconded by Smith. A motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of ordinance by title and summary. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to the comprehensive fee schedule for the 2019 ordinances. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council. The city charges fees for services rendered to individuals and organizations when it is not prudent to assess those fees to taxpayers in the form of tax increases. So all fees are charged by the city need to be approved by the City Council through an ordinance. This year, city fees are organized into a comprehensive schedule rather than a separate report from each department. And I would just really like to thank staff, particularly Joe Rube and Ellen Paulseth, for putting this all together in one place. It's the first time we've ever done that. And it's comprehensive, and if you look at the resolution, you will see all of the charges by department. The thing that I would note is there are a few changes to the fee structure, and those are outlined on page 200 of your packet, where we've actually done increases. Most of those have been brought through you either earlier in the year or in tonight's budget, but they relate to planning fees, utility rates, trash hauling, which was required by our contract, franchise fees, city clerk fees. We added a goat permit.
I'm so relieved. I was worried about the gold permit.
And we added partnership and advertising rates, which have been shared with you earlier. And then also, with this action previously, we changed the false alarm fees. So there is a resolution. We're asking for your approval. It's 2 motions, similar to what you've been doing in the previous action items. And like I said, they all are outlined in the staff report. They start on page 205. And they are comprehensive, and they're all in one place, which I think our public will appreciate too, being able to find them all in one spot. So we're really happy about that.
I was going to say, I mean, nice job. And then how will the public find them in one spot? It will be on part of the website, I assume.
On our webpage, and we will have all that information at the information desk. And now all of the department heads, any staff who gets a call knows where to find it on our intranet.
Excellent.
And so it just makes life easier for us and our residents.
I move the ordinance to establish a comprehensive fee schedule for 2019.
It's been moved by Juniman and seconded by Smith. A motion to adopt the ordinance establishing a comprehensive fee schedule for 2019. Is there any further discussion? Yes. Councilmember Abrams.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate having all of these together in one place. I think that that will be very, much more efficient. I do want to ask that the partnership and advertising rates that we just added, it's a very nice brochure that Mr. Sharon put together. If we could put that on our website along with our businesses, there's a business section. I looked at that trying to find, actually, someone asked me about the rates, and I went to our website and I said, oh, let me look it up for you. And I couldn't find it anywhere on the website. And so I wound up finding it in the council packet this weekend, and I took a picture and I sent it. So if we could put that with the business section, I think that that would be very helpful, so businesses could see that, and it's right on our website.
Mr. Sharon is nodding yes. So I
Thanks.
think that's a good possibility. All right, good input. Councilmember Zhang took a small break, which, by the way, we're going into a closed meeting next, so if you need to take a break, just wait. But anyway, it's his last meeting, you know.
I'll move the ordinance.
Okay, good.
I'll move the ordinance establishing comprehensive.
I did.
I think there's a motion.
Need the
There's a motion
resolution
on the floor.
authorizing publication.
And I have my light on.
Have we even taken our vote yet to Councilmember Smith?
I just wanted to commend the staff for remembering to keep the goat permit, because forgetting that would have been bad.
Oh, it's really getting late.
All right.
All those in,
Button anymore.
I think we're at the point of saying all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Next motion.
Yeah, the next motion,
I
please.
I further move the resolution authorizing the publication of this ordinance by title and summary.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Juniman, seconded by Abrams. Motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of an ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? You missed a joke, but we'll,
Okay.
The bad
Councilmember
ones, so
Smith will
never
be
mind.
telling it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hearing ayes, all, the resolution is approved. So we are now at our point, we've passed all our ordinances. Thank you to the staff. I know that these things can be an enormous amount of work, but I think for our residents and for all of you even, I mean, right, for all of us, it's just better. So that brings us to number 6, the update on status of labor contract negotiations. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Slawik, members of the City Council. We are going to ask you to close the meeting to go into an update on the status of our labor contract negotiations, and we are allowed to do that by Minnesota Statute 13D-03. So we will need to acknowledge that we're closing the meeting at 9:45 to go into closed session. And then we can conduct that meeting here, or we can go into the Maplewood room, whichever you prefer. Maplewood room?
Okay, we're
Okay.
going to go in the Maplewood room. Anything else we need to say?
Do you have anything else we need to say
Who's there,
besides
or-
closing the meeting?
I just think we should, before we do this, we should acknowledge that we give longevity badges to Mark Jenkins and George Gonzalez, who stuck with us till the end of this meeting.
Thank you.
Page 221 of your packet, which is the staff report, there is a motion there that really kind of directs
I see it now.
the action that's necessary for tonight's closed session.
I was going to move pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D03 subdivision B to close the regular meeting, to go into closed session to discuss strategies, review offers received from the bargaining units, analyze fiscal considerations, and to provide direction to staff on developing and negotiation positions for ASME, LELS Local 173 police sergeants, and LELS Local 153 police officers.
Second.
It's been moved by Abrams and seconded by Juniman. The intent to close the meeting is allowed by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to look at collective bargaining agreements, so named by Councilmember Abrams. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That, we are going into a closed
At
meeting.
9:46.
9:46. Out of closed session, and with that, City Manager, will you give us a report? It's about 10:20.
Yes, and let me just quickly get to the staff report.
The council was in the meeting, was all of us and you and Mr. Funk.
Correct. So, Mayor and Council, we were in closed session from about 9:45 to 10:20. We are back in the City Council meeting. We had a closed session to talk about two of the contracts, our contract with LELS sergeants and LELS police officers. We also discussed the status of 3 other contracts and got some feedback from the council and some direction as to how to proceed with those negotiations. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to Mr. Funk to talk about the 2 contracts that we're looking for approval from you this evening.
Mr. Funk, we want the Reader's Digest version.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Just real quick for the record, just want to clarify that in closed session, we had the Mayor Slawik and all the council members, City Manager Coleman, and myself, Mike Funk, Assistant City Manager. Thank you, Ms. Coleman, members of the council. The real quick overview of the LELS police officers and the LES police sergeants, contract duration for 2 years, 3% wage increases. I should clarify general wage adjustments, first on January 1st, 2019, and 3% on January 1st, 2020. Insurance, there was no changes to our insurance, so that will remain the same, and then we'll have reopener language in the second year of the contract, which would be 2020. There were some small changes to the contract. I won't spend much time going through those, but we had consideration for some specialty pay, elimination of some job classifications in specialty pay, and some clarification to our holiday pay provisions. And then we had an adjustment to longevity, and then also some promotional language and open shift clarity provisions. Those were discussed. If there are any questions, Madam Mayor and Council will be happy to answer those. Otherwise, we do have a motion for your consideration on page 221 of the packet, which is in the staff report. That motion would be to approve the 2019 to 2020 collective bargaining agreements between the City of Maplewood Law Enforcement Labor Services, 153 police officers, as well as Local 173 police sergeants. And then that would include authorizing the mayor and city manager to execute those contracts.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Abrams and seconded by Juniman. A motion to approve the 2019-20 collective bargaining agreements between the City of Maplewood and Law Enforcement Labor Services, Local 153, police officers and law enforcement labor services, LELS, Local 173, police sergeants, and authorize the mayor and city manager to execute said contracts on behalf of the city. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing ayes, all, the motion is approved. Is there anything else? Any other business? All right. Last, everybody, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to all our residents if you are still up watching. And we'll rerun. And have a good one. We will see you in January.